Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon. This is Brendan, and we are here to give you this great Seahawks coverage as ever. And we are getting to celebrate another win. It seems like a common refrain that we get to say very often here. But before we get into this victory, which we're going to break down from all angles and parts and pieces and edges and corners, Brendon Nelson, Seahawks Brendon Nelson, is back in the house here at the Hawks Nest. How you doing, Brendan? How you holding up?
Life is good, right? Like we weren't supposed to get this many wins the whole season. So life is good.
The experts were telling me that we were only going to get like two or three. That's what they were saying, Brendan. How have we gotten here? How have we gotten already to seven to this many wins early on this year? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean it's why you never throw a season away. You never know what can happen. This is an odd sport. Every year it's 5 to 6 teams fall out of the playoffs and get replaced by other teams. So you got to keep taking shots. And we don't have a superstar roster, but we have enough to take a shot here, and that's what we're doing right now.
Absolutely. I think you're seeing a kind of the conjunction of two things taking place here, being one, the fact that indeed the NFL season is an unpredictable one. You never know when a conference is going to be stronger or weaker given year to year. A division is going to be weaker or stronger year to year, or just where your schedule will bear out to you. And when you catch opponents the right way, say nothing of a stronger, weaker schedule, and then it gets down to the team centric nature. There's so many kind of moving parts that are uncertainties, even if they are considered certainties in the offseason when everybody's prognosticating about where the year is going to go. And it ends up finding out, no, there's actually a lot of wild fluctuations here. I think, too, one more reason that maybe people can understand, both you and I, why we were so ardently on the don't tank, because of the fact that you never know, as long as the odds may have been for this situation to play out like it has, you never know when it does. And it doesn't cost you anything to sort of see how stuff starts out in the beginning of the year before you have to start from that territory of just completely saying, no, it's all about the future pick. The season's completely lost.
Right. I completely agree with that. And sometimes this is your reward. And look, I know it's hard for this stuff to happen, but you see it every year, pretty much. Every year there's a team that surprises people and is much better than everyone expected. And this year it happens to be us.
Absolutely. I think too, the second thing of the two items I was going to put together was the fluctuation aspect of it. Specifically, you got the NFC down a little bit. Maybe the NFC West isn't quite as tough as it's been in recent years. It's still tough, but maybe not the top pop. Maybe we'll see, I guess, when it's all said and done with that. But it also seems like to me, Brendan, and I don't want to get too touchy feely with this type of thing because it's a very hard thing to put your finger on, but you sense it, which is that there's a feeling within this team right now that is different than recent Seahawks years. I would even say the year we won the division, I didn't feel sort of the same sort of tight-knit structure to the team that this does. And maybe it's just having so many youthful guys here. I'm not putting this into anybody blame camp, just a feeling. It's less than it being about saying anything about anything prior. It's more about just the sense of it right now and it having those. It's not the Legion of Boom team or anything, but the shades of that same kind of closeness you just sort of feel in the way these guys play together. Am I out in the free spirit, new agey kind of territory with this, Brendan, or is this something you're seeing as well?
I think that there's definitely something to it. You watch the way this team interacts with each other, the way they talk to each other. You have little things like the post. I think one of the post game interviews, Geno, Metcalf, and Lockett did it together. They
Mm-hmm.
were all there together instead of doing it individually. You have the way this team talks amongst one another. You have the way they've completely fixed so many things that started this season terribly, like especially the defense in general. Literally went from worst to first basically overnight. That takes a tremendous level of communication and it takes a tremendous level of teamwork and camaraderie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's there too. And we now know that a lot of players on this team were not thrilled with their teammates in previous years. So I think there's pretty compelling evidence that that's a factor.
Do you think as this coming together right now that this could absolutely be given as a function of Coach Carroll's ability as a coach in this realm of things and setting this table up and this team the way it is and getting a team into this ascending state of things, that this is definitely into where his wheelhouse is and he's back in his comfort zone?
I had this conversation on Twitch the other night, actually talking about how I think the right way to look at the Wilson-Carroll dynamic is it Wilson, what he became was not good for Carroll's football philosophy. A lot of people are trying to figure out how to contextualize what went wrong with the Wilson-Carroll dynamic. And some people are trying to like go back and retroactively say, oh, Wilson was never any good. Wilson was never a good quarterback. And they're trying to find other ways to justify it as well, to explain what we're seeing, because this team looks so much better than they ever did with Wilson outside of the Super Bowl years right now, and maybe 2015 or so. But I think the best way to put it is that having that kind of a player who dominates everything else, it's just not a good fit for the way he wants to go about coaching. So yeah, having a team of young players and, as one person put it in my chat, humble veterans like Geno is working very well for him.
Yes. And all the more reason, I think, as I had, and you think you're in the same camp of it, of saying the team, if they were smart going into this offseason and looking ahead to this future and how they put this team together, should hold to the 2012 blueprint as strongly as they could, and not to build a super team again or one of those historically great teams, but a team that can be capable of getting to the Super Bowl again. And I think that they would do that by staying back to their old designs, and when they feel themselves pulling away from those old designs a little bit, well, remember how we did the original structure? It worked so well, and it really does feel like to me, Brendon, that they're fitting to type in the way that they put this team together, in the way that the team's playing, and in the future of what I think we're going to see from this team, even beyond this year. Now, with us in the hands now here of Coach Carroll, getting a little more firmly, as you said, defense worst to first. I was a guy who was saying, well, I do want to still take a full year here, but I'm also getting to the point of, even if this defense came back to down to a spot of 15 here or 20 here throughout the course of this year, I would still feel like Carroll got enough of a flash from the defense within that if you add some more talent, you finish some things off around on the edges of the defense, it can be great going forward. Does that sound like the same place you're kind of looking at it from, or are you still in a more of a coach, you still got to prove some stuff to me kind of stage of things?
Right now, the vibes around Carroll have to be pretty good. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not personal, right? We just want results.
Yep.
We don't care how the team wins. We just want them to win. We want them to have success. If we show up next year with a game plan that involves running fullback dive 40 times a game, it might be kind of boring, but if we won games with it, then I would be cool with it. Hell, that would be really boring, actually. I think I'd still be okay with it, though. You just want to see the team win. And right now, the team is overachieving. They're having success. And there's optimism about the immediate future as well. So right now, you have to be pretty positive about the way he's taking this. Now, if he decides to commit himself with a long-term contract to Geno Smith next year, the interesting thing will be, how does that model fit in with having another highly paid quarterback? How is that going to work? So that's going to be interesting. But for right now, you got to say he's just doing his job.
Would you say that they're in that same boat still? If the prior quarterback was commanding well over 15%, let's say, of the salary cap, and you get Geno down to like 7%, do you still put that in the same bowl of, well, it's still paying, you're having to work around still paying a high amount of money to the quarterback? Or do you look at them mitigating a little bit of that cost, and that there's actually some savings involved with that approach if it goes down that lane?
You said 7%?
Yeah.
The 7% is not that bad. No, you should be able to work with that. There's a big difference between 7% and the 15% that Wilson took up near the end. Yeah. I still say both should be something you can work with, but there's a big difference there. I mean, there are going to be multiple players on this team that take up a bigger percentage of the cap than Geno will, if he's at that 7% that you talked about. So no, I have no problem with that.
Running quick numbers, if my math's right, you're at something like $33 million a year. If the cap's at 230, 232, whatever they've got the final number at for next year's cap, that would be about at that stage for about 7%. And that's why I say that I feel like there's maybe a bit of a differentiation here between this and the Wilson deal, whereas the Wilson deal was one that was every 4 years. You were going to not only have to re-up them every 4 years, but it was also going to be top of the market money every time, which was going to be more into that average per year, well over 15, 15% and up, or right around that 15% area of things.
Yeah, so you're assuming the cap's what, 232?
Something like that. That's what I'm thinking. 230, I guess, is what we
Yeah,
could go with.
that's the other thing people need to remember. The cap keeps going up, and all the players know this. So,
Right.
yeah, obviously you don't want to overpay a player. Nobody wants to do that, but it should always be something that you can work around. So I'm interested to see, because when Wilson's big cap hit started to kick in, the Seahawks front office and brain trust in general, they tried to do things to work with that, but I don't think that I don't think they did a great job of it. I think they could have done a little bit better with some of the aggression that they took. I know that they would argue that, hey, we tried to trade for Jamal Adams. That was trying to go all in around our expensive quarterback. Trading for Clowney was another move like that. Maybe Sheldon Richardson, but you left some stuff on the table, and I understand. Like, in hindsight, remember last year we were doing this show every week. We kept talking about why won't they convert Wilson's base to bonus? Pretty much every week we talked about this. Now I think we know why. I think we kind of already knew we're probably going to trade him unless he has a monster season. So we don't want to move the money down the line.
Oh, there was, to your point, there was nothing to preclude Wilson from saying, yeah, here's me being selflessly letting you convert my base to bonus, and then coming back at that end of the year and trying to force the hand of the trade too. Say nothing of if they wanted to trade him, if Wilson came back and then forced him. And now the dead money hits looks stratospheric compared to what it would have been, which was already very large.
Yeah. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that I want to see how this team reacts when Geno's making real money.
Yeah. No, I do as well. I think that's when I get down to it for me on the brass tacks with Geno, and I'm sure you're giving this a lot of thought as well about where you stand on Geno. It's, of course, the money matters, the dollar amount matters, how much he's going to cost going to matter on this whole deal of things. But if I have a quarterback coming in who is highly paid, but is going to get half of what the highest paid guys are going to get, as far as, let's just say, from percentage of cap is concerned, to try to keep things simple and easy a little bit, then at that point, even if the cost is fairly high, I can swallow that and go, that's going to be something that they can still work around. And we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a bigger question about where the numbers go with Geno, because of the point you just made about the cap going up significantly. This not being his basically first and probably only big money deal he's going to get in his pro career. So probably not going to get a discount on it either from his standpoint of it, especially if there's other teams competing for you for his services. But I would be willing in thinking about this, Brendon, to go to a decent degree as long as we can keep those percentages in line.
Yeah, I think Geno could give like a little discount, but it could be like the Golden Tate thing, right? Where, remember, Golden Tate said, yeah, I'll take a discount to stay in Seattle. Then he got his offer and he's like, yeah, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
And then he got the heck out of here. It might be something like that kind of a discount, but I said it last week. I'll say it again. You're not going to finagle Geno Smith to take some lackluster contract at this point, especially with the way he's playing. Like he knows, guys. If you suddenly go up to him and like, here's $30 million a year, sign here, he's going to be like, yeah, because I'm going to ask for 50 at the end of the year. Like
right.
You're not tricking me.
Yeah, exactly. And quarterbacks do tend to remain healthy enough to get to those free agent periods, and not like other players where we have to really worry about sometimes, like, I might not make it through this year. Better get the money while the getting's good. And I think the only other way you could maybe get around with him on it is if you can somehow factor in the money, the bonus money, the guaranteed money in the deal. Maybe that would be a way. And if I'm Schneider, that's my creative approach to structuring that deal, Brendon, for the same reasons I just said, where quarterbacks do tend to get through those deals. They don't tend to have their careers robbed in some weird way. So giving him that guaranteed money, let's say for a 4-year deal, from our standpoint, it's going to be money spent anyway, really, at the end of the day, because he's going to probably be healthy through that period, or at least somewhat healthy. He might have major injury, but not career reckoning injury is what you worry about in those deals, right, Brendon? Which is Deshaun Watson goes down tomorrow for the Browns. They got all that money on, they're hooked. That's the problem you worry about most. But I don't think I'd have as big a concern of that happening to him necessarily. And so that's where I think that's the creative spot where Schneider could come in here and maybe find the counterbalance to this, where it's that Geno takes that little discount, but he's only doing so because he's gaining the money on the front end of the deal.
Okay. I'm here for it.
He's there. Sign Brendan up. We got a first dono in the night. Chase Stern with a $5 donation says, "Hey guys, don't want to get political, but did you guys vote?"
I don't want to get political, but let's get political.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm abstaining from the answering of this question, Chase. I don't tend to not answer on questions very often, but unfortunately, even answering these questions can get to kind of a political, bent of things. And I'm pretty hard lined about avoiding this kind of stuff on my channel with it. But Brendan's free to answer if he wants to.
Everybody who watches my streams already knows I answered this, and the answer is yes, I did. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
There we go. Thank you for the $5 donation, though, Chase. I do appreciate it. I do indeed. Hope you're doing well tonight. Chase with another $2 donation. Thank you, Chase. It says current thoughts on re-signing Geno. So we just kind of did the breakdown on that one, Chase. I didn't see your donation before. We were kind of breaking that down. I hope you heard that one. I think we're both relatively on board with it, but there is a line. It's a distinct line. I don't want to say it's this amount of money, but I think you kind of will know it when you see it. And I from my standpoint, Brendan can answer on his edge of this, Chase, but when I hits that past that line, then that's going to be reach the point where I go, okay, that's too much. You're talking 40, 45 million in that vector of things. That's probably going to start making my knees shake a little bit and go, okay, now that's too big of the cap. We are going to be back in that same place. And I like Geno's upside. I like where he's going. I just don't like the thought of paying these quarterbacks that kind of money.
Problem is, if you don't pay him, what do you do then? Because we've been over this. This rookie class is not what we thought it was going to be. Can you think of a single quarterback in this upcoming class who has actually raised their stock with their season they've had? Because Van Dyke went in the toilet. Okay, yes. So there's one. Phil Jerkovic, I haven't even thought of him since the season started.
I know.
And I looked up the numbers. It's not good. Spencer Rattler's been bad. Who's raised their stock? Because CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are just staying where they were.
Yeah, agreed. Bryce Young's not doing it.
Hendon Hooker's the only guy, maybe. Yeah. And he has problems too.
Yeah. My theory on this would probably be that they would look to go find another veteran along these lines. Absent, is it a Drew Lock? Is it a Jimmy Garoppolo if he becomes a free agent? I know I don't want to see this. You know what I mean? So don't get me wrong. I'm not wanting it, but I would think that they would look to that route and then draft one of those guys you talk about being a little bit later, be it in the second round or third round, even that are, be it a Hendon Hooker, maybe with the first round pick at the end of that point, and then just double up and hope, between the culmination of those two guys, you got somebody that separates themselves and trust in that and that's a bit of the formula. Remember, Brendan, they did this before with the Russell Wilson experience. It wasn't simply, here's Russell. It was, okay, we've signed Matt Flynn and we still have Tavares Jackson on the roster. So you had three guys that still were very capable of all being, theoretically capable. Matt Flynn, you could make an argument, probably not, but you had three guys who were duking it out essentially. And as we saw this training camp period, they just had two guys duking it out, which a lot of people gave him a hard time for, having the Lock Geno Smith thing going back and forth. But at the end of the day, maybe Geno was better for it. Maybe part of how Geno's played right now is because of that competition that you put out there. And maybe they wouldn't be scared to go down that road once again. I wouldn't be, Brendan, because again, they've had some success doing this.
Is Drew Lock really the guy? If we do go the no Geno route, do we just go, okay, let's do with Drew Lock what we just did for Geno?
I honestly, I think Geno's a different cat. I think Drew Lock's a younger kid. Geno had more time in the oven to sort of bake in the background and master his craft, as he obviously has. And that, Drew hasn't had that kind of time to do that. At the same point in time, Brendan, this is kind of my big point with this, is that there's been this long held theory that when a guy washes out, he's a bust, he ain't nothing, and he's done. And that, Geno's going, well, we've never seen anything like Geno before. And that's absolutely right. We really haven't. But here's the other thing we haven't seen, Brendan, is teams committing to try to do this before very often. You will get retreads, but very oftentimes you just get retreads of guys who don't, they're just given that second chance for the hell of it kind of thing. Not because they ever showed anything, like a Sam Darnold type guy, where Carolina's like, oh yeah, he'll be the guy. It was all on Adam Gase. I'm not saying I have a lot of trust that Drew Lock's going to be what Geno Smith's been, but here's the other thing with doing that. Let's also understand this too, Brendan. If Drew Lock takes over next year, he's getting a team with 4 picks in the top 2 rounds. He's getting a team that's going to go out there and be active in free agency, that's not going to be negative $44 million in the hole heading into the year as we are this year. So he's going to have a better team out on that football field than what right now Geno Smith has. And that's maybe another factor into this, is that if you build the super team up, which is my whole point on their 2012 blueprint, if you build the rest of the team up around, it lessens the need of the guy to be truly that difference maker at the quarterback position. It's nice to have, certainly would be on the lookout for it. But if you can get a guy who can be, hold the water relatively well as the defense dominates, as the run game dominates, and you've got playmakers on the outside all over the place to throw to, I think that can elevate the performance of a quarterback. Do you feel like am I crazy on this approach, or do you think this is maybe a way to go?
It's definitely not crazy. My question would be, is Locke going to learn how to, it just seems like he makes way too many bad decisions to be a viable starting quarterback in the NFL. Like you saw it in that preseason game, that was his chance. And I think he had 3 interceptions. And I mean, I liked Drew Lock. I wanted him to get a chance. I was excited to see what he could do. I mean, early on, I wanted him to win the starting job. I thought that was more interesting than Geno, but there's still something with him that needs to get better, because there's no way this team is going to be able to sustain anything if they have a quarterback turning the ball over 2 to 3 times a game. So he individually will have to get much better, even if the team is better.
Geno this year had to prove to everyone that he could play within the fourth quarter when the chips were on the line, and that he could perform at that time, because for many people's eyesight of him, he shrunk in those moments. And coming to this year, that was one of the narratives upon Geno's back was, oh yeah, he might make some pros here and there and look all right, but then things get really tough and he's gonna wilt, and he's just proven that. Drew Lock this preseason, and look, it was your point is right on the mark, because this was stuff that followed him from Denver, of course, too, right? The stupid turnover, the turnover at the bad time, the boneheaded play when you just can't have it. And he'll mix that amongst a lot of very good plays. I give him a little more room with the preseason, because he had the one game where he played good throughout the first game. Then at the very end, didn't see the blindside blitz, which is on him. He took it. Carroll took it, said that's on him. It was on him. That's where the fumble came from there. And then that game at the end, remember, he was coming off COVID. And then he also knew I had to come out here and shine, because Geno had a bit of a head start on him at that point, a lead. And he knew I needed to come out in this final preseason and really blow up everything outside to overtake this job. I got to play lights out to get this job right now. So I think he put a little bit undue pressure on himself and pressed on some of those throws. It's just my guess on it. But I do think if you put him in an offense that like we're building towards, with the defense he's going to have, with the special teams he's going to have, with the playmakers he's going to have, with the running backs he's going to have, I think you give a guy like Drew Lock that. And I think, yeah, there's a thought process there. You can do the same thing over once again, that you can find a quarterback like this that's highly talented, that's been thrown away by everybody, and it's been termed he's dog trash. Let's not forget with Drew Lock too. His time in Denver, he's playing behind that same offensive line that Russell Wilson's playing behind. And the one that I've been saying for a while now, that I think Denver Bronco fans are finally coming to the realization of this. Our line can't pass protect. And one of the worst things for a young quarterback is a bad pass protecting offensive line. And that's just what Drew Lock got the moment he got inserted as a young starter. It almost does undue damage to these guys when you do that and put them in that kind of position as a young player. And boo on Denver for doing so. I've been pretty consistent on knocking them on this going through back to the offseason, because it's just a horrible approach to take with young quarterbacks. It's why I think Schneider should get some credit here, Brendon, because whether it's Geno or the next rookie quarterback, they're going to have a good offensive line in front of them. They've set the stage rather than asking the quarterback to set the stage for them.
I hope it happens, but the other factor to keep in mind here is that Pete Carroll is still the oldest coach in the NFL. I'm sure he's not thinking he's going to do this for another 10 years, and he wants to win now. So if he feels like Geno Smith gives him the best opportunity to win now, even at that price tag, which I have to say, looking at the other options, I think that's probably the case. I think he will probably go for it.
Do you think he still has the power to overrule Schneider on that?
That's an interesting one, right? This is where sometimes I don't understand how this can work. How can you have a head coach that's different than the GM, and then they disagree, and then the head coach has to coach a team that he doesn't even necessarily like? But then I look at all the times when the head coach and GM are the same person, and it never works. So I wonder if one day that's ever going to work out. You get a head coach GM who's actually really good at both jobs. But that's the hard part, yeah.
I mean, that's my thing with it is I agree with you. It's logically speaking, it makes sense that it should work that way, but the data doesn't tell us that The data instead says that it's at its best. And I apply this a little bit, Brendon, to a coach has got to be a head coach, and an offensive coordinator has got to be an offensive coordinator and call the plays. A defensive coordinator has got to be a defensive coordinator and call the plays. A general manager has got to be in charge of the personnel decisions. And everybody's got to have their role, because they're hard roles to do in this day and age when it's such a competitive sport. And you have everybody else that will compartmentalize those positions in that way to get the most out of them. And that's why I think it has failed, is it's too much for a head coach. Just way too much. And I think that there are times too where a coach needs to be overruled, Brendon, where they've got their heart in it. They've got the emotionality of it in it. And you need the cold-blooded guy at the top down going, no, we're going to clip this. This needs to be done. This is the smart approach to take here. And this is the one we're going to take. We're not going to pay Geno Smith $43.5 million on average, because you're worried about how long you got to coach. That's not what's best for the organization long-term. So I don't have, I'm not sure if this is the way it'll go, Brendon, because we just still don't know for sure whether or not Schneider's really got that power or not. But right. I think Schneider would have a lot of watching what's happening right now with the situation in Green Bay, where he came from with Rodgers, and how that's hamstrung that organization and spending that money, and how he's been hamstrung by the money spending to Russell over the years. I don't think he wants to get himself right back into that. If it gets too expensive, that is. If it's good price, I'm just saying, not if it gets too pricey.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chase, for the double dono, though, man. I appreciate you. R. Sanchez with the $2 donation. Thank you, R. Sanchez. It says, Kane Man, get to 10,000 subscribers and you get a C note from me. Hey, man, bet. Bet on that one, man. That sounds good to me. We're getting closer and closer. So that C note might be coming from you faster and faster here, man. I'm probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks out on that one. So get that crispy. Give me a crispy one, Sanchez. Give me one right off the press. Thank you, brother, though, for the $2 donation. Hope you're doing well tonight, too. Garth Knight with a $5 donation. Thank you, Garth. It says, give Geno some money because he's tall and can work this offense like a person designed to. Metcalf still can't catch worth a damn, but Lockett is here. Yeah, he can definitely see the offense all the way through. He can see over the top of the pocket. He can make all the throws. No doubt
and
there.
When we actually start talking about this game, we'll talk a little more about Geno specifically in this game. But the thing that really stuck out to me is that there was a moment in this game where it looked like things were going to spiral out of control, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I took away from this game, maybe more than anything else.
Yeah. Oh, well said. There's a lot of, for a lot of quarterbacks out there in that moment, I think we're going to talk about is they would have shrunk in that moment and fallen back. Look, I'm not going to, if we do end up signing that deal, I'm not going to, if it does get to be super expensive, Brendon, I'm a little bit like, well, there's a price I don't want to go, but at the same point in time, I'm not going to be pulling my hair out if we did it, because he has been that good. He has been, in every game, a good quarterback. Even the 49er game, he was playing it well. He's playing within the designs of the offense, what was required of him. He's earned his deal. And if he gets paid here, he's earned the right at this point. This kind of year he's put together is legitimately, to me, a top 3 season for a quarterback right now in this sport. Maybe top 4, I guess, if you want to put Burrow in front of him. Because Burrow's definitely balling out. And there's another guy, Brendon, that they did nothing for him on the offensive line. I worry about that kid all the time about getting just another injury, because
they tried to. It was just a bad attempt.
Yeah, it's just nothing works. He keeps getting the hell beat out of him at times. But thank you, Garth. And yeah, Metcalf still has some times where the catch stuff can be a little bit dodgy. I think he was good in this last game, but he's had his share of drops this year.
I think he's got like 3 drops this year. I don't sweat it that much. He's never going to have amazing hands, but I'm old enough to remember T.O. T.O. led the league in drops every year, and it was okay. He made enough plays to make up for it.
Yeah. If I've got a guy that's going to, drop 11 passes in a season, but he's going to end up within his career 12,000 yards and 110 touchdowns receiving, then I'm perfectly fine with riding with that guy on my squad. He also is a guy that, though the hands do sometimes leave him, he also does, Brendon, have times where he'll make the magnificent catch, where he'll make the high degree of difficulty one-hander, or jump up over a guy and moss him. Maybe it's not consistent as much as we'd like, or you'd like, Garth, and I'll acknowledge that's very true. It's not something you see him do for being a guy as big as he is. He's not doing it like Megatron used to do, but he does have it in his bag, and it can come out eventually. It pops up here and there. I still like him on this team. I still love what he's doing for this team, and I'm still glad that he's a part of this long-term future, because he's going to be helping us, I think, into the coming years, not to mention this season, get back to an elite status again. Robbie Red with a $2 donation says, how would you feel if Jody sold the Hawks to Bezos?
I mean, we'd never have to worry about money.
Yeah.
We could give Waldron $200 million a year to stay on as an offensive coordinator instead of taking a head coaching job next year.
Bingo. That's one of the underrated, Brendan. You bring up one of the underrated spots of if you do have money as a coach or as an owner, being able to, oh, you want to go be a head coach? Well, what if I'd paid you exactly the same money? You just stayed here and you just remain waiting in the wings, or I'll even give you a little more than you're going to be paid to head coach. And I think, Brendan, you do mention one of the things that's the most important thing here with the new owner, though, which is the purse strings and having a guy that can spend the money. And that when you have owners that are restricted, you can see how that holds those organizations back. It's very tangible. It's very obvious when you got those that'll spend and those that won't. And so having a guy that will spend in itself, to me, I'd be hard to say no to that versus an alternative, which may be a guy who's just barely has enough to scrape by to get the money together to buy the team. And now he's just running year to year on it.
It seems like all the recent people who have bought teams tend to be like the super duper rich, like Tepper and the Walton family. Like you're not seeing a lot of entities like scrape together their last $1 billion to make the purchase. So whoever it is, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, it's a good point on that. We're not seeing a lot of ownership groups, right? That used to be the thing you'd see a lot back in the day of this guy owns 20%, this guy owns 44%. Now it's definitely being brought in by the one big swing and who comes in with the I'll write the check for $5.5 billion. And look, there's few people that can write that amount. Hawks are going to sell for probably $6 billion at that time, if not more. So who there's few people out there that can, I just hope the Saudis don't buy us. That's all I'm hoping for at this point. They don't live tour us. Thank you, Robbie, though. I appreciate it. And I think we'd be okay with it, man. It's hard to find owners that are all in and not thinking about their pocketbook in sports sometimes. It's ridiculous. It annoys the hell out of me because they get so much profit when they eventually sell the clubs 20 years down the road. But it is a reality nonetheless, potentially you can run into, and we would not be running into it with him. Guard Knight with a $5 donation says, Brando, I heard your cat make a sound when the question was brought up between John and Pete. Orange Cat knows John is and should be in charge. Thank you for the $5 donation. The cat don't lie, Garth. You know what I mean? She's like the Oracle back with the Greeks and all that. You had to climb the mountain to go see the Oracle. She's got that same kind of power that resides within her. I don't know how I lucked into it, but
yeah,
I did.
I mean, if we hit this next draft and we see more picks that go against the Pete Carroll model that we came to know over these last several years, it's really going to feel like that Schneider must have just taken over that part.
Yeah, I mean, for us who followed these drafts as closely as we do every year, and the prototype type players they look for, and the difference of these players in this particular draft, for instance, let's just talk about the offensive lineman alone. You went for pass protectors first and foremost. That's never been the way you've gone about it at all. To a militant level, this has been run blockers first on the offensive line across the board is what we're going to favor. So the draft two guys that wasn't the case with does indicate somebody else is at the wheel potentially here because you didn't go this route ever, never, won't do it. And I do think we'll have more evidence for that, Brendan, after not to mention how we spend the money too, right? If we potentially do spend the money a little bit differently once we have the money to spend as we clear off that dead money from the cap. Thank you for the double dono, though, Garth. I do appreciate you. And R. Sanchez, thank you for the double dono as well. Says, I wonder if Geno would want to go to a lesser team, even if the money is better. Would he go to the Colts?
Well, what if one of these teams, I made a video about this a little earlier, one of these teams that is going to need a head coach next year and also doesn't have a quarterback, Carolina and Indianapolis being chief among them. What if one of them hires Waldron and he takes Geno with him, Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday style? That could happen.
That could happen. That very well could happen. These coaches get hired younger and earlier than ever, right? I mean, some guys don't even have to get to being an offensive coordinator and they get moved, it seems like, at times now. So I hadn't thought of that, Brendan. It's a good possibility that could occur, especially for a team that's looking to try to figure things out quicker. I will say I think Carolina is in an insanely horrific place as far as their cap next year to pull that off. If they're talking about signing a guy for 30, 35, $40 million, I think that they're in troubled shape, troubled waters. But Indianapolis could do that. They're definitely going to have to figure out something with their quarterback situation. They may not be bad enough to get one of these quarterbacks in this draft. Like you said, you got Levi Stroud and Will
Young.
Levis and Stroud and Young. Maybe if you're talking about guys in the top 15.
Well, that Colts team is making a concerted effort to lose every game this year, it looks like. So
yeah, that's the one question. Yeah, is Jeff Saturday going to be the permanent coach there, or is he just interim right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I'm not against it or anything, but it does smell, right? It smells of we just want to lose every game, doesn't it? Am I crazy?
No, it does because a little bit because Jim Irsay is like that kind of guy. He's got that weird, crazy energy, maniacal kind of energy. He's got like he's got the McAfee energy. You ever see that one with the McAfee guy, the antivirus guy?
Oh yeah.
I get the same vibes off Jim Irsay that I get off that McAfee guy, and it's just like just you're not getting a lot of foresight, reactionary in the moment. Just this is a good idea right now. Let's go. I don't know why. It's just that's my feeling with him. But I mean, it's possible. Sanchez. It's a great thought process. Is that can make a lot of sense if you do it, especially in conjunction with Waldron. And my instinct would be, well, Waldron's only been an offensive coordinator 2 years, but again, this has not precluded people from signing guys that are considered bright minds and able to get the job done, especially with the offensive year he's going to put together, Brendon, where he's going to create a great running game, great rushing attack, not built around Brendon needing a quarterback running read option, by the way, not that threat, just simply a great rushing attack. Then can join that with a very efficient passing attack that's also got a good amount of explosiveness to it as well. That very well may be something we have to deal with here, Sanchez. Very well.
How long was Brandon Staley a defensive coordinator before he got the head coaching job? 1 year, right?
Was it only one? I think it was 2. I think Phillips was out. He was there a couple of years.
I think he was there he was there 2020 and then he got hired 2021. I'm almost positive about this. I think Wade was there in 2019.
Yeah, because Wade would have been there for the Super Bowl year. He was there the New England Patriots year. Wade was the defensive coordinator at that time, which was 2019. But then you've got but then I thought, okay, maybe you're right on that. I have to look it up at some point, but that does sound correct because Wade was the guy. It wasn't Staley there in the Super Bowl time. So
yeah, and Waldron's only 44. He's going to be 44 next year. So age is not really a thing. Like 44 is not even that young. Sean McVay was 30 when he got hired. 44 is not that big a deal.
And this is where the league's trending with stuff too. McDaniel's in there as well with Dolphins. The younger guys are being hired like never before. League goes in different trends, and the trend right now is to go out there and sign the young guy rather than looking for the retread. It's to get the young up and coming mind and get that somebody that can relate to the younger players. That's the other thing that they always say about him, Brendon. He can really relate, unlike those older coaches that get staunch and craggy. Thank you, though, Sanchez, for the double dono, man. I appreciate you, brother. Garth Knight with another $5 donation says, I want Tom Cruise to buy the Seahawks. I don't know. I don't know why, but it'd be fun. Orange Cat, your thoughts? Let me see. You want Tom Cruise? Tom Cruise? She said, yeah. She's a big Mission Impossible fan. Huge.
Oh, boy.
Huge. Oh, you're not a big Mission Impossible fan?
No, I love it. I'm trying to decide if I like the idea of him owning the team. Oh, boy.
He'd be driven, man. He'd be driven. He'd be like, we're going to get Super Bowl. All right. We're going to Super Bowl. We're going to win. Is it going to win right now, right? It's going to happen. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. Boom.
Yeah. The team commercials would be amazing.
Oh, they would. They would. The stadium would be packed. I'm with it. I like the Tom Cruise idea, Garth. I can ride with that. He's got to have a lot of money at this point, doesn't he? I mean, that guy's got to be worth a couple bill. All the mess. He's like 30 years in Hollywood. I mean, he's pretty.
Yeah, and he's got some friends he can pull in as well if he needs more money.
That's true. Yeah, he's probably got a lot of favors you can call in / I believe that as well. So that would be interesting. I like that, Garth. I like where your head's at with that one. Well, we got caught up a little bit on the chat here with the super chat. So let's start breaking this down a little bit, Brendon, and looking back at this game. I know I went a little bit detour at the start with a couple of the other just storylines I want to talk about at the top of things. But in particular, this game, when you walked away, I always like to kind of get your just general thoughts on the game as the game closes down and you're thinking about it and what this game is and where it is. What was your thoughts coming out of that game?
I think the main takeaway has to be the fact that this was a game that looked like it was starting to get away from us. There was a moment, there were some frustrations in the first 2.5 quarters. A few times when you felt like you really let an opportunity to take control of the game slip away. You had the shovel pass to Disley that didn't work at all. I think Phil Haynes blew the block.
Parkinson.
I'm sorry, Parkinson. Yes, you're right. You had Lockett sliding 2 yards short of the first down marker on what looked like he had the conversion. You had missed tackles on 3rd and long, resulting in first downs.
Mm-hmm.
All these little things. And it had the vibe of like after the pick 6 by Geno, it felt like a game you were going to lose 14-13 and you'd just be in agony the whole week trying to figure out how did that happen? How did we lose that stupid game?
Yeah.
And the offense just said, no, it's not happening. They 3 times in the last quarter and a half, they go all the way down the field, get it in the end zone, 3 and out, get the ball back, all the way down the field in the end zone. Arizona finally gets a touchdown. They've got to put it away again. They do. That was as dominant a 3-drive sequence as you can find for an offense.
Mm-hmm.
They took their time. They busted 1 or 2 big plays, but most of it was just keeping control, moving down the field 6-7 yards at a time, running the ball, couple of 3rd down conversions, everybody getting involved. It really, I think, has to raise the ceiling on what this team can do this year, watching them do something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the takeaway for me. Just the fact that it really looked like the game was about to get out of control. It really looked like the game was about to slip away. Geno looked a little shook. He took a couple of bad sacks in a row. He had the pick that I do think was a bad throw. I understand that it's a weird play, but I think it's a bad throw. He was missing 1 or 2 things. It wasn't his best game. But for him to come back from that, I think is the most encouraging thing.
Yes, because it's not easy to do. I think that you're into the depths of the game, as you said. You've been fighting through it all day from Geno's standpoint. If we were to make a baseball reference here, Brendon, it would be like, he didn't have his best fastball in the day, but still yet performed really well. And the times that fastball was leaving him at the weird moments. There was a play in the back of the end zone where he's trying to do the same kind of feathered throw that he did on that play that got picked, where he's trying to get it to Metcalf and the defender's got it. Byron Murphy gets his hands on it, almost has an interception there, but Byron can't catch. And Geno kind of gets away with one in that moment. But I mentioned this because of that resiliency that you touched upon. I agree with you. It's a keystone moment of this game, that interception, and then how you come back from that interception. And those other 2 touchdown drives that you had after that initial drive were really on the back of you answering in that way, of you coming right back at it. And the offense and football's a momentum sport to me. And the fact that Geno was able to kind of generate back into that momentum, not fall into himself, not get shaken, not get shook, not go, oh man, this is what everybody says is he'll eventually turn into the same old Geno. No. This is why, to me, Brendon, I think his performance is going to be sustainable moving into the future, because not only that it's been all these games in a row he's given you back to back, but that he's also risen to the moment time and time again, risen when you've needed him, risen when the defense has failed, risen when it's on the back of him making a bad mistake and needing to turn things back around and find it quickly. Because I think you're right, Brendon. Brendon, would you say if we win a 3 and out there after the interception, that game's a loss? Fair?
The defense was playing so good for pretty much that whole game, they could get the ball right back. I'm not
Good.
ruling it out. But like I said, at that point, I was thinking to myself, I didn't feel like we were going to lose, but I did feel like this smells like a 14-13 game where we're just aggravated for the whole week about how did that happen? Like, how can you play that good on defense and still find a way to lose to a Cardinals team? Like your offense is relatively healthy. Like, how did it happen? And the offense just says, no, we're not letting it happen. It's not going down that way. And they completely took control of the game. And we've seen them do this kind of in previous games, like that Detroit game.
Mm-hmm.
If we punt once in that game, we lose. So the offense just said, no, we're not going to let that happen.
Yeah. Played absolutely clean. They had times needed to play perfectly. Geno made a couple of throws, especially on that one drive there. He was coming down the field in the 3rd down. Again, he's done this at times. Brendon, you're in 3rd and 11. We used to look at 3rd and 11s and go, well, get ready to punt. And now we got 3rd and 11s, and he will throw that 11-yard in-cutting route with 10 yards needed. And Lockett especially will hit. I've seen him do it to DK too, but just fearlessly throw that ball in there. And there's defenders around. He's not scared to do so, and he will just right there on a spot where it needs to be, where there's nowhere else to throw. And it's what's interesting to me about, or what's impressive to me about Brendon, is he throws those kind of throws. The Lockett touchdown as well, right down on the end zone, where he's throwing these balls accurately to a spot, but he's also throwing with a tremendous amount of power on these throws too, which is that's where it tends to be where it wanes for you, right? When you have to actually really gear up and put everything into the throw a little bit to fit it into a tight window, the ball starts to kind of, especially sail on you and go a little bit, start to rise on you. But that's not the case with him. I thought that Lockett throw, for instance, was an underrated throw because he's got like a basketball player in the post, he's got to put it on his body to keep Budda Baker from having an opportunity to make a play around Lockett on that moment.
Yeah, that was, I guess that pass, you could really talk about it as like the turning point of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we were down, it was 3rd and 12. Like that's a circumstance where you're kind of thinking, okay, defense, we're going to need you to get the ball back already. In the back of your head, you're already thinking about what the defense is going to do in a play here. But no, it was a great throw. And it's not like it was something fluky that happened. It wasn't one of those Wilson plays where he dances around for 18 seconds, spins out of a sack from 3 people, and then shucks it up on the sideline. And Doug Baldwin has like grows an extra leg out of his back so he can get 2 feet down. Like, no, it was just a play. It was just a normal NFL play that you see all the time.
Yeah,
and
just going through
the old Wilson
stuff
was fun. It was good, but this just looked like business as usual, and maybe that's better.
Yeah. Well, I think it is better because it's easier to sustain, and it's more predictable in its sustainability. I think with those wild plays, which are fun to watch and take your breath away, it's harder especially with defenses that'll sometimes play to take away that. I think one of the things that stands out to me with this offense right now, Brendon, is that you really can't lean in any direction with this offense. You can't say, okay, we're going to take away DK and force you to have the other receivers beat us with a double team out there. Or we're going to gear up and stop the running game and make Geno beat us throwing the football. Or we're going to make you prove that you'll take the short and intermediate throws. Where is the spot defensively against this offense right now that you really can press down on and force them out of? They can sort of counter any of your punch. They sort of have an answer stylistically wise to whatever you do. Is that the way you see it as well? That this is a team right now offensively as they are cooking, is that there really is a spot that's got some real gaping weakness sitting there?
Well, part of it I think is there is no real counter right now for the 3 tight end stuff.
No.
It seems like the NFL is just lagging behind there. They haven't figured out the counter. They probably will. Give them some time; they'll figure it out. But there's not much you can do against the 3 tight end sets except just hope it works out. You don't have some button you can push that just neutralizes it. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, the defense is going lighter in recent years. It's probably going to make that harder to find that answer like you could with the read option, for instance, when it came on the scene. Because of the fact that it does come down to really forcing a team to decide between base defense and nickel. And if you go base, have you structured your team to have 3 linebackers on the field that can both cover and play the run? Not many teams have that. It's more of a specialized position at times, or you have a guy who leans towards having a strength in one area of the game and a weakness in the other, which you still get back around to you being able to exploit with that formation. So yeah, I think that's been a real big feather in their cap this year for how they've gotten it done, Brendon. But it's the running game too. It's as Walker's now become this threat, and teams are really, it seems to me, Brendon, there's nothing I'd like to see with you seeing the same thing, that I'm seeing teams gearing up to stop the run. I'm seeing a lot more loaded boxes at times. And it's exciting to see, because I think that's going to open things up on the back end here. It's tough for Walker at times because there's not a lot of room for him in those stacked boxes. Is that the same thing you're kind of seeing as well?
Yeah, especially early in the game. Like Walker, it was tough sledding early in that game for him. He got better as the game went on. A lot of his production came on those, I think, last 2 drives when we were trying to pack the game away.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was definitely a concerted effort by Arizona to make sure they could take that away. And for a chunk of the game, it worked. It didn't work the whole game, but yeah, there's definitely some of that going around. I think that especially when we go to Phil Haynes at guard, I think he played like half the game.
Mhm.
The run blocking on that right side becomes pretty dominant with him and Lucas. Those guys can just maul sometimes.
Agreed.
So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going around.
I think to the success in the later portion of the game, my thought process on it was that that's part of what you do when you have a committed running game, is that there's going to be times for this first, second, third quarter that you're not getting those runs coming through there, but you do wear those defenses down eventually, and you get in that fourth quarter. And if you've been able to win the time of possession, which if you're moving the chains, you're usually going to have a good opportunity to win the time of possession. That's the point at the best time of game that you would want it to happen, that you start to break those defenses down and they start to tire out. And those 3-yard runs now become 9, 10-yard runs. And then, now you bust a kind of a big one off the edge of it, kind of a back-breaking run. It seemed like that our Cardinal defense started to get a little tired into the back of that fourth quarter to my eyes.
Yeah, they had to. I mean, Walker touched the ball almost 30 times in this game, and we ran, I think, 77 plays, which was a season high.
Yeah.
Like their offense was doing them no favors. So they were definitely going to wear down, and they did.
Yeah. And I thought they were expending a lot early on in the Cardinals defense work, because they were so amped up understanding the what was at stake here in this game. You lose this game, you're on pathway, you're on the trajectory for your coach to be fired. A lot of change to happen in that organization. It's not going to be a good situation, because there's really no hope for you to get to the playoffs now into this year, even with a pretty mild NFC, or an NFC with a lot of parity, I guess. Let's say that. So offensively, I agree with you. The line really stood out to me in this game a lot across the board and how they played. I thought everybody was pretty darn solid. You're right about the Haynes situation. You can see it in the PFF scores, where there's a really big difference between Haynes and Gabe Jackson. They're trying to do the Gabe Jackson, sample size to take care of that knee, but certainly Haynes looks like a guy who's looks better there at this point right now than where necessarily Gabe is. Tight ends were all good again today. We got to see Noah Fant finally, Brendan. How about that? Fant finally showed off some of what were kind of looking for him to show.
Yeah, this was a good matchup for him. This was the game to do it in because of the way the Cardinals defend tight ends. So I kind of felt it coming, and I do think he's too good to not have a big game at some point. So yeah, I kind of felt like this was a great game for him to step up and make some big plays, and he did. So that was cool. I don't know if this is something that's going to be sustained, because some of it is native to the way Arizona plays defense. But I think that by the end of the year, he'll have numbers that are basically in line with what he was getting in Denver. So, not he's no Travis Kelce or anything like that, but he's a good player.
And it'd be great to have him as that, but I don't think we need that with the power of the total of what we have at the tight end position. As long as, like Colby, when he's in the game, or Disley, they're a factor in all of the elements of what you want a tight end to do, be it catching, blocking, both pass blocking and run blocking, and that they can be a factor in that realm. I think that's what you really need from him. If he hits those numbers from Denver, and he blocks as he's blocked this year, which is reasonably well as an H-back tight end, I think you feel okay about that going into next year, even with the price tag that you have on him, because you do have such a nice, and again, I don't think, Brendan, it's something the league's going to solve anytime soon, because it's one that I don't think you're going to see teams in the league going out there and holding guys on the roster. Just, we've got this guy on the roster now, this extra linebacker, so we can play these 3 tight end sets, because the 3 tight end sets aren't proliferated enough through football for it to be considered that big of an issue, I think, for teams to dedicate that roster spot. And roster spots are so important.
Yeah. It's not just about getting the tight ends, and getting the tight ends is pretty hard, but it's about getting the tight ends and then figuring out exactly how to use them. You need them to be good blockers as well. I think that's one thing that is making this 3 tight end offense work,
Yeah,
because Colby Parkinson, not a blocker in college at all, really, to my knowledge, has become a pretty good one.
He has. Carroll has referenced it. It's what I've seen on my eyes with the tape as well. And that's it, Brendan. I think that's their sort of secret formula with these tight ends. It's not that you have a star Gronk-like player or Kelce that you mentioned. It's that you have 3 guys that can adequately do everything you want to have a tight end to do. And then that means that they can force mismatches. They can go find that spot on the roster where you've got a guy trying to cover Colby, and he should be trying to cover Colby. He doesn't have any business doing it, or trying to play the run game, and Colby's going to be able to get after him. Or you're going to be in, let's say, nickel when you should have been in base, but you stay a nickel, and now they've got a tight end going on a safety, coming downhill on a safety, a 6'7" tight end coming downhill on a safety or a cornerback. That's a mismatch to that tight end. And they found the right thing here with it. I hope they stay with it. I think they will, Brendon. I'm glad that we're being trendsetters on this rather than chasing everybody else. Because I know that's being used a little bit, but to your point on that, there's not a lot of teams that have the tight ends that got the trio of the skill set you need. So defenses can have a guy out there that you might have 3 tight ends, but one of those tight ends will be just a guy who probably can't block very well, who probably can't catch very well. And yeah, you have him out there, but he's not really that kind of factor in that way.
Right. So it's not as simple as just doing it. Yeah, that's basically what I was trying to say. So, and here's the thing, like whenever a trend catches on in the NFL, usually it inspires some copycats. I will say that. So I imagine in future seasons, you will see more teams start to use 3 tight ends.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will be something that comes along more and more, especially with probably the hybridized players coming out of the college system, like your Pitts type guy. These guys that maybe are more of the in-between, and it's easier than some of you're just carrying basically an extra receiver at that point sometimes. But they've got to be able to do all 3 of those skills, or else it's not quite as, to me, as devastating of a formation package that you can throw out there. Garth Knight with a $5 donation. Thank you, Garth, for all the donations on the channel, man. I appreciate you. Says, I just want everyone to know that Aaron Rodgers lost when Olivia Munn left him. He knows it and continues reading books to get a gal like her back.
Yeah. After all these years of watching Wilson, it's so weird to see a quarterback be so emotionally demonstrative on the field when things aren't going his way. So I was watching some of those highlights from the Lions game, and the way he's acting is just, it's kind of bizarre. Not even just Wilson in general. I feel like I'm used to seeing players act like a Madden player where whenever something goes bad, they just go maybe they go and then they walk off the field and everything's fine because they're, AI bots. It's so weird seeing a guy like Rodgers act the way that he acts when things go bad.
He's definitely not a guy when the times are tough and the chips are down. You saw this with McCarthy with him at the end. He's not going to be the guy who you can rely upon down there. If things are going great and well and good, he's great with it. And I'm not talking about necessarily his level of play, though that's dipped down now too as well, Brendon. But and again, being a quarterback leader and being even keeled. I mean, hell, Brendon, we got to see this from Kyler Murray in this last game, didn't we? A lot of, again, more of that demonstrative on the sideline. That's what I'm talking about. Watching DeAndre Hopkins, and he's saying, that's what I'm talking about. And he's just shouting at DeAndre, and it's like, dude, that's the one guy on your offense you're probably not one to shout at, my guy. That's the one guy doing work for you. But I don't like it in my quarterbacks, Brendon. I don't care whether you've been a legend in the sport, an MVP, or whether you're a young guy still kind of finding your way through. I think it really does the team no favors when their quarterback's out there throwing a little hissy fit. And, look, he's making bad throws in the red zone. I mean, what is he, it's not on anybody else at you. It's on you at that point,
Right.
I don't like it. I like my quarterbacks nice and even keeled, man. Thank you though, Garth. I appreciate you. Y2KHA with a $2 donation. Thank you, Y2K. I appreciate you as well. Says tag Geno, trade him for 2 more firsts. Could you imagine that?
I mean, I don't know what his trade value would actually be, but that is an appealing option as much as I don't love the non-Geno options going forward, right? To load up on draft picks even more. You would, there's definitely an offer that I would have a hard time saying no to. I'll leave it at that.
Could you say no to 1 first-round pick?
I actually don't think I could.
I don't think I could. I think I'd be lying if I said I could. I feel like the answer should be no. I should say no, but I think I'd say yeah. I'm glad you're in the same place. You would?
I think so. He's an older player. There is, and I know nobody wants to talk about this right now, there is some possibility he's having a career year and will never get back to these heights again. It's at least possible. This isn't like a Patrick Mahomes thing where he's played like this for year after year after year. So I think I would be willing to do it. I don't know where that leaves you for 2023, but maybe I'm okay with that. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah, I think I would. It's like, we'll figure that out downriver. You know what I mean? Just let's get on the boat and go. If we got somebody to take, here, we've offloaded this. Imagine trading a quarterback for 2 first-round picks in back-to-back years, 2 different. That'd be so crazy. But Brendon, let's also acknowledge, you made the point earlier. The quarterbacks in this draft are not as good as we thought at the start of the year. They have not raised their stock. I thought we would have 5 first-round quarterbacks in this draft. We still might end up with maybe 4, but it's as much going to be stretched with teams really, to me, having to kind of talk themselves into some of those guys at the back of the draft in the first round. Say nothing of the guys in the top 10 who have some question marks to them as well. So maybe that does push other teams to being willing at that point to look more for the veteran if they think they've got their roster in the place and position that we can win right now. The Colts with Jim Irsay there, doing pills and coke off whatever, off booties. Could he be crazy enough to kind of say, let's go this route? I don't think they would. I think the Colts, frankly, have probably gotten burned enough on trading for quarterbacks recently that they're probably just going to go for a young guy. But Carolina, something in that realm. I mean, Carolina, if they give you first and a player or something like that, I mean, maybe,
What if Houston does move on from Lovie Smith? They don't have a quarterback, really.
Well, so we got Houston calls up Shane Waldron and they said, we'll bring Shane Waldron. We want Geno. And we're like, okay, we'll tag him. We want your first round pick this year for Geno. And we get 2 top 10 picks. we're just dreaming here, Brendon. Y2K, you've opened up a can of worms because me and Brendon now are starting to daydream about all these first round picks we could pull if this was happen this year. Because look, there could be a scarcity situation in the league this offseason at the quarterback position, and there could be theoretically 8 or 9 teams looking for said quarterback. And if that occurs, it will then be a buyer's market versus seller's market, and that would work in the Hawks' favor to pull that kind of situation off if they wanted to.
Yeah. Other than that, though, what other teams could do it? Need a new coach, need a new quarterback. I can't think of anybody else off the top.
Well, does it have to be a team needing a new coach and a new quarterback? I mean, could it be the Giants calling up after Daniel Jones this year and saying, we'll make that move for him? They've got some history with Geno there with him at being in the organization prior. I mean, to me, that's a situation that is a possibility.
Yeah. That's a distinct possibility. I would say losing Geno is a little easier to swallow if you're keeping Waldron, I think, because at least you're keeping this offense in here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can bring in another quarterback who can do what Geno did. If you lose all of it, then I don't know what to do because Waldron might take Dickerson with him. We were talking about this in my Discord the other day. Like who do you promote to OC in that case? You don't really have anybody.
Frank Reich.
Yeah, but you'd be bringing in a brand new offense. I mean, I would, of course, take Frank Reich, but it would be a new offense.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a tough situation in that respect of it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, it could be within the Waldron case. Unlike Geno, you don't have any real control of him going or not. And the coaching staff may feel like, oh, we lost the guy that was really the guy for Geno and pairing. So let's be more open to saying it. And it does take a team being willing to offer that amount of draft capital. But look, quarterbacks go for a lot. And coming off the year he's coming off, if he convinces a team that that's who he's going to be for the next 2 to 3 years at this performative level he's legitimately right now top 5 quarterback in the sport this year, that would be what you would pull. I mean, he's having a better year right now than the year Russell Wilson put together over the last year and a half that netted us 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick. So it does sound a little, at first blush, you're like, well, it's crazy. But I mean, these situations can play out very funny in the offseason. And all a team needs to do is talk themselves into being a contender and a quarterback away. And there's no other guys out in the market like Geno like this, especially if you think, well, you can go get Lamar and pay double the money with the injury risk that's involved with him at that point.
Yeah, I think reputation plays a lot into it. Wilson's reputation was much better than Geno's reputation. Like, I think that stuff is going to matter. Like, to some people, Geno Smith is still the guy who got his jaw broken by his teammate in New York.
Yeah. No, I feel you. Like I said, it's Y2K getting me dreaming on this, man, as much as anything else. So there's probably no chance in hot hell of us getting 1 first or even a second for Geno. But if the offer comes down the track, I hope we're listening. Garden Knight with a $5 donation. Hey, you two jackals. Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be good at this point. He looks like a Florida man with long hair and bad decisions out there.
I'm disappointed. I thought he was pretty much a sure thing.
I'm as well have to eat my share of crow for him not being good at this point as of yet, Garth. I will say though that I brought this point up earlier on this show, being that one of the worst things you can do for a young quarterback is give him a bad pass protecting offensive line Not to mention maybe not exactly like a lot of playmakers or guys that he can really lean on. I know Travis Etienne's having a good year. Again, they went and got Christian Kirk, but at the end of the year, he's not had exactly in 2 seasons there exactly a lot of great guys and dynamic guys on the outside to throw to. And that offensive line that he's behind is not exactly the best offensive liner. And I wouldn't say it's even top 20 in this sport. And I think it gets hard to make an assessment to me on these young quarterbacks when you put them behind a bad line, because they're going to develop bad habits. They're going to try to do too much. It's just, to me, I've seen it too often with these young guys. I'm not blaming it solely on that. He's got to own some of his poor play here. I mean, you were watching the game live a couple weeks ago. That red zone interception he threw against the Broncos down at the 1 yard line, wasn't it like 1st and goal at the 1?
Yeah, 1st and goal.
I mean, that's bad. That's on the quarterback there 150,000%. And that game, that throw at that time that cost themselves the game like that, and that's just on him solely. That's the stuff that he's got to clean up. But we'll see, Garth. We'll see. Let me see where he looks like if you actually give him a line. Maybe we trade Geno for 2 firsts, and then we throw 1 first for Trevor. Thank you, Garth.
I would do it. I still like his potential.
I do too, man. I'm still in on the Lawrence. I'm in on those flowing locks. Let's go. I think he can still with the right team. Thank you though, Garth, for all your donos, man. Max Shermant with a $10 dono. Thank you, Max. Hope you're doing well tonight. Says, what if we make Shanahan? Oh, Shane. I read that as Shanahan, Shane assistant.
Freudian slip.
That was a Freudian slip. I like me some Shanahan. What if we make Shane an assistant head coach, OC, to keep him longer? Well, I think you only have one assistant head coach, can't you? You can't have like 10 of those guys, can you?
And why would that be better than getting an actual head coaching job right now? That's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's something you could offer a guy like Max Sean Desai, where you're trying to court Sean Desai, and he's got a job that he can go get with the Minnesota Vikings that is equivalent to what he could get with the Seahawks. And so the Seahawks are trying to add one little extra thing to bring him aboard. So they say, okay, we'll make you also assistant head coach. And that's something the Vikings weren't willing maybe to offer. That's where you can use that for that. But if you have an assistant coach who's going to go be a head coach or has head coach offer out there, to Brendan's point on this, he's not going to take an assistant head coach if he's got an actual head coaching job that's out there and available for him to go take. He won't turn that down. I can't think of it's been turned down before. I think Josh McDaniels turned down the Colts job a couple of years ago. Right. There are times that does occur, but it's very infrequently.
Yeah, Dan Quinn did it this last offseason as well. It's the argument would be if he gets a head coaching job and it doesn't go well, it's going to be hard for him to ever get another chance at it. Like, some guys do get a second chance, but not that many.
No.
So he might look at this and go, well, if I only get one shot at this, I want to make it count. So I'm going to stay on as a coordinator for a little bit first. But realistically, most people are going to say, ooh, that's a lot of money and prestige I can go get now. Why not? Why not just take it? And if it doesn't work out, then oh well.
Yeah. And they signed it's significant bump in pay, Max, where it's, maybe he's making $500,000 a year right now. You go and you make now $3, $4, $5 million per year as a head coach in the NFL on that deal. And that's guaranteed money. So if you sign a 3-4 year deal, you're going to get all 12, 13, $14 million of that as a head coach guaranteed, which is a lot of money. Those coaches don't always get those, especially the assistant coaches don't always make a lot of money. So it'd be hard for him it'd be hard to keep him, Max, on that thing. It'd be really, really, really tough, I think, if he gets the offer.
Yeah, but we talked about this the other week. There are not going to be a ton of head coach openings this offseason, I don't think. So the opportunities for Waldron are going to be small. And the opportunities that are there, some of them are going to want a coach with skins on the wall, a.k.a. Sean Payton or Dan Quinn. So the opportunities for Waldron this offseason could be very, very short.
Yeah, very, very true on that. Very true. Thank you, though, Max. Appreciate the $10 donation. R. Sanchez with another donation. Thank you, R. Sanchez. It says, if Geno walks and you can get Lawrence or Fields, who do you go with? Me and Brendan are going to be right on the same page with this one. I just know it.
Yeah, I will say Fields has impressed me lately, but Lawrence, it's all day Lawrence.
I'm all day Lawrence too, Sanchez. I like what Fields is starting to show in flashes. I think he needs to get a lot of the benefit of the doubt. The same benefit of the doubt I'm applying to Lawrence, I'd apply to Fields. And these are two of those guys that came out of that draft class that haven't been given the opportunity to really flourish because of the situations in front of them. But I still lean back on my pre evaluation of both those guys, where Lawrence was my number one guy on the board. I think he's shown flashes of becoming still that number one guy. As we've seen with Geno, some guys develop a little bit slower, need a little bit more time, give him some spots. You put Lawrence in this offense with DK Metcalf on the outside, Tyler Lockett, and the pass protectors he's got on the tackles, not to mention the running back situation. I think he would flourish behind this line. So I'd go that, but I'd be open to Fields too. I wouldn't be anti-Fields if that was the only guy available of those two.
Yeah, I was watching that Jacksonville Giants game, I think 2 weeks ago. And one thing that stood out to me is that those receivers were never open. No. Every play, it was like they had a Giants defensive back growing out of their hip.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And that's it. You got to, these evaluations of quarterbacks are tough. They're not as simple as other positions that you can just look at and see is the running back finding the hole? Is he exploding through the hole? Is the defensive end getting pressure? Is the free safety keeping things covered up deep? There's things with certain positions, Brendon, that you can easily see that are on bright display, but there's other things it takes a little bit more of the detail driven approach to it and looking at the situations as to what happened to make that assessment. And yeah, I agree. Anytime I've watched the Jaguars, I've not seen wide open field and spaces he's going to. They signed they had one other free agent signing with a receiver they did a couple years ago too that still hasn't been any good for them either. It just nothing at tight end. Brendon, outside of Cam Robinson, their left tackle, who's okay. I think he's more of a run blocker than a pass protector. Can you name one guy on that offensive line?
They have that, God, I can't remember his name, but we talked about Norwell.
Yeah, there you go. I knew you were going to bring your one. Norwell, but that's it. I mean, it's a line that's devoid of very much outside of that. So yeah, give him a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. Just give him a little bit more. Let's see. Then we'll make our assessment on him when it's all said and done. We got another donation here. Thank you, Taker 610. Thank you for the $2 donation. It says, given Pete's age, why can't Shane be his successor?
That assumes that Pete's going to retire in the imminent future, which who knows, right? Like if Shane Waldron can get a head coaching job next year or be told you might become the head coach in 3 years, it's a pretty easy decision.
I think Brendan's right on the button with this one, Taker 610, and it all leans. Let me ask you a question. If you had to put your money down on Pete leaning to 1-2 directions at this point in his life, of Pete, you're close to retiring, the end's near, right? Or I'm going to be okay if I have to die on this football field. I'll be dying happy. If you had to pick Pete's brain, Brendan, and you could pull his brain apart and look inside, what do you think he would lean towards as an answer of those two on those two eventualities? I'm either really close to retiring, or I'll be perfectly happy with dying on this football field with a headset on, trying to argue a call.
Yeah, I would expect him to want to keep going if I had to guess. But look, if we win the Super Bowl, maybe that changes. Maybe he's like, okay, I'm good now. It's possible, but based off what we've seen, probably not.
And that's where I line. I'm not trying to be more morbid with this. He could live 20, 25 other years, but I think he'll maybe potentially could want to coach through every one of those 25 years. There is a spot where maybe he does kind of hit his spot and go, okay, I'm done. But he's shown no signs of that, Taker. He's never given any indication of, oh, I'm getting close to the end here. Well, I can feel the end's coming. And if anything, right now, you have to feel like he's revitalized. He's finding another as somebody put in my comment section a couple of weeks ago, he's finding his 642nd wind. He's just clicking in.
Yeah. I do believe that he considered retiring after 2017. Mm-hmm. I do believe that. There was a lot of talk that he came very close to it, but I don't see that same potential at this point. Now, things are going well right now. If things suddenly started going badly, then that would probably change. But agreed. Yeah.
But does he want to get through? Does he want to work through all the hard parts of a theoretical rebuild to where now the fruits are coming and he's not going to get a bite of that sweet banana, or that orange coming off the tree? No, I think he's going to want to be here for that, having done the hard work or been a part of the hard work to set that groundwork for that future elite success, theoretical future elite success. But
right.
Yeah, Probably too early on that one, Taker 610. We have to get more indication that Pete's closer to retiring than remaining here in the long term. Casey Brown, thank you for the $1 donation on the chat, man. I really do appreciate you doing that. So I hope you're having a good night, and thank you so much. Very kind of you. Peter Ryabi, I always speak your last name I can't pronounce right, but I can pronounce the fact that I thank you for your donation to the chat, man. Thank you for the $2 donation. You're awesome for doing so. I do really appreciate that. So let's turn this over a little bit, Brendon, to the defensive side of the ball, as we talked about the offense a bit. Your defense, once again, this week, I don't know if you've been able to see the stats yet. I've been looking I didn't see anything come out yet, but I think no doubt about it, they're going to be, once again, over the last 4 weeks, the number one DVOA defense in the entire NFL. Hard to see in a game where they gave up 13 points, them not to be right back in that area of things. We've talked about what we've seen from an adjustment things already prior within, like you talked about, getting away from those weird fronts and whatnot. Is there anything more you saw from this game in them taking steps forward in addition to things that we've seen in recent past here in these 4 games, as far as them making extra turns here? Or are they just leaning in more to these adjustments they've made, and that's what's carried the day?
All right, there was a Reddit post about a week ago, and I talked about it in a video I made earlier today, but it outlines how the defense has changed schematically over the last month compared to where it was the first 5 games. And the short version is they've cut down significantly on cover 1 and cover 4, and they've expanded pretty heavily in cover 2 plus 2 man and cover 6. So there's a clear change that is connected to this improvement. And they also went from using what I call the 2-man fronts on 71% of the snaps to about 53% of the snaps. And almost all those snaps have gone into running the 3-3-5 nickel sets. They actually ran 0 3-3-5 nickel snaps the first 5 weeks and have now been running it about 28% of the time, according to this post. So there's a clear difference.
And 3-3-5, of course, Brendon, for those folks, that's 3 down linemen, essentially 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs, right? We go 3-3-5.
Yeah, it would be 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. So that's like when you have Kobe Bryant. Okay, so yeah, that's the 3 corners and 2 safeties, Ryan Neal and Quandre. Yeah.
I think too, they're finding times of getting both Neal and Josh Jones on the field at the same time. Because that was the thing that jumped out to me in the PFF grades with this last game, is Josh Jones actually had himself about 24 snaps in the game.
Yeah.
And I wonder if one thing that stood out to me with Josh Jones early on in the year was his PFF score would be horrible, but it would be really horrible on the back of the fact that he wasn't tackling very well or being a very good run defender. And he's a guy that, even going back to the preseason, they talked about him with ball skills and coverage abilities. My theory on this, Brendon, is that he's a guy that's actually reasonably a good cover strong safety, which is kind of doesn't go together usually, those things. And that they're finding a way to put him in a position to succeed right now. That's why his PFF score is as high as it is on a sample size grading, of course. But that's why it is because they're putting him into situations where he's not in there necessarily having to run and defend more often than not. It's in those knowing passing situations. They're essentially doing with him, Brendon, what we've advocated for them to do with Darrell Taylor as a pass rusher, which is get him into situations where we know that's going to be a pass and then just let him be that rotational pass rusher. Seems like they're doing some of that within it as well.
Yeah, well, from what I've seen on like dime packages, Jones comes in as a safety and Ryan Neal kind of moves up and plays almost linebacker. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they've definitely found something there with that. And again, giving the coaching staff credit here, where we talk about putting our players in the right position to succeed. Don't concentrate on the things that are what they can do. Put a bright spotlight on the things that they do really well and find them to put in positions to do that more often than not on a football field. Very much easier said than done. A lot of coaching staffs fail at doing that type of thing. I think they're doing that right now with this defense. You look at how Boye Mafe is being used on early downs as a run defender and how he's finding success in that role. I think he's had a very quietly strong rookie year. It's just the other guys have blown the roof off, so we've kind of forgotten about Boye. But I think that he's coming along, and Brendon, I think he's going to be a problem into the future. I think in a good way, of course. I really do think he's had a solid year in retrospect of looking at things. I've been watching some more of the tape on some of these plays with him, and I know with the pass rush, it isn't always there, but he has been, for a rookie and for a guy that was supposed to be very raw coming out, he's been pretty darn good.
Yeah, and like I said, usually when it comes to edge rushers who are rookies, I'm used to them being good rushing the passer, but useless against the run. And Mafe is not useless against the run. He's actually been pretty good.
He's excellent. I mean, he's as Carol mentioned about this, he's so strong. He's got such a good long frame as well to counter with it. You can't move him. And that's one of the reasons I was calling for it so much early on in the year, Brendon, is you'd watch the tape and difference from snap to snap of Taylor, who just looked like there was helium in his butt, just and Mafe on the counter of that, where he could just sit down and root right down and hold his spot and you weren't going to move him an inch. It was really, really kind of on wide display with that. And I think that's been a part of their approach in getting success out of this so far in this 4-game run, Brendon. But the defense is playing absolutely phenomenally. I mean, you and I have never seen anything like this before. I think we have a hard time kind of even wrapping our head around this kind of turnaround as they have, even coming on the heels of these last 2 years of turnaround, Brendon. This is a whole nother animal, isn't it? This isn't the animal of the last 2 years. This is a different type of beast that's been put together in a lab somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just DVOA. There are many other stats that say we have the best defense in the league over the last 4 games. So I don't think, maybe in 2020 there was a point when our defense was like top 5, but I don't think it was ever the best. This defense, who's playing better than us on defense right now?
I don't know. I not over the last 4 games, to holding teams where you're holding them, to being as good as you are. And they're not just good at holding them points. That's been something they've done in recent years as well, but then they would give up a lot of yards and then there'd be no turnovers. You're holding teams down as far as points. You're getting turnovers. You're getting pressure with the front 4, which has been a problem going back 4 or 5 years, Brendon. They're finding a way to get that as well. It's just remarkable when you go across the board how many boxes they're ticking of what you'd want a defense to do. To be a great defense, and they're ticking those boxes. And you have to feel like they're only going to probably get better from here, knowing Carroll's history. I did a video a couple weeks ago about Carroll's just take the last 6 years, Brendon. So outside of the Legion of Boom era, right? Because I could take the Legion of Boom era and go over the back 8 games of a schedule and put that in there and juice the numbers up of his winning percentage. But if I take just the last 5 years, he's up at like a 650 winning percentage on the back half of the schedule of games. So 8 games and into the depths of the season, and that to me was pretty remarkable for teams that have been up and down. That 7-9 seasons in there, right? Or that 9-7 seasons in there, so I was bringing in a couple of ones where I wasn't trying to cherry pick that stat. So it still means that even if you'd agree, Brendon, if I increase that to the Legion of Boom era time, that's going to be up around 700, probably even more so. So that winning percentage would be even higher if I took it over Carroll's entire time here. His teams tend to get better. They don't tend to peak early.
I think that part of it might be by design because we don't do a lot of tackling in the preseason and training camp, right? We're not. It feels like those first few games we're kind of still working our way into it.
I think it's purposeful, Brendon. That's why I say I give Carroll credit for this, especially when you have 10 years of it. That's beyond sample size at that point. Something's being done from a tactical standpoint, from a forceful standpoint to do it. I think it's part of also why a lot of Seahawks fans get very irritated with how we treat injury situations in some years. Well, we're always the most injured. We're always the most injured. I also think we're also one of the most conservative teams when it comes to injuries and playing players, which leads us to end up being one of the league leaders in injuries on the year. But also allows you to be healthier as you get to the end of the year because you weren't pushing those guys in game 7 and game 9 to fight through that high ankle sprain or that pulled hamstring. Instead, you're trying to keep guys a little bit more healthier through the course of the year. So I think the team's going to get better. I think potentially, as even as scary a thought as this is, Brendon, this defense could be even getting better as we go along here. And worth mentioning here, obviously the Rams are the team that we don't know how we're going to play against them or they're going to play against us. They're probably not what their record exactly is in that respect, right? Those are going to be some battled games. But Brendon, we got 2 teams on the schedule with a 500 or better record remaining. That's it.
Yeah, I actually saw a thing that said our strength of schedule was really tough the rest of the way, but I looked at the actual schedule and I was like, no, I don't think so. Unless you're assuming the Rams get like Brian Allen and Van Jefferson back.
That's why I put that caveat out there, because that they could play us tougher than their record is at the time. And that could make those games, I have to acknowledge that could make those tougher. But I mean, just on what they are, as you'd like to say, your schedule is what it is. Your record is what it is. And if that's the case, then, I'm just saying, The road could be better for us to be able to tighten this down. Let's give some props here to Uchenna Nwosu. Again, I'm about to drop a video here on my channel in probably the next 24 hours here on Uchenna, and he again just played a marvelous football game. He's a complete player down the line, Brendon. I've been diving through the tape on him with the all 22 stuff, and he is just I've got some great cut-ups of him with some of what he does, and he's so multifaceted as a pass rusher. He gives you all the effort in the world every play. The guy just plays with the highest of kind of motors out there, and he's a refined pass rusher, and he's good against the run. You know, has he blown you away kind of like he's blown me away at this point this year?
I would say he's exceeding expectations. Yeah. Honestly, when we signed him, I actually didn't really know who he was. I had done a lot of research into free agent pass rushers. For some reason, that one just kind of my eyes just kind of went over that name, I guess. I literally didn't know very much about him at all. Once I looked into him, I was like, okay, this sounds cool, but I wasn't expecting, like, if he were able to go to the negotiation table this upcoming offseason based off how he's playing so far, what would he get? Like 20 million a year, 22 million a year?
He's probably pushing himself into 20 plus at minimum right now.
Max Crosby got 25.
No,
he's playing Max Crosby level for sure, right?
He is, and I think they're very close to the same age. And you know, so yes, I think he's going to have a very strong, and also built within this, of course, Brendon, is the cap going up and that changing the dollar numbers and inflation and all that. So you are going to be paying more numbers, but could very well be what he could command. The one thing I think that does change it maybe in the Hawks' favor with this, of course, is they have the 1 year of club control left on him at a very cheap rate. And for right now, he's a bargain. So they can come to him and say, well, we just don't have to sign you anything, and we can franchise tag you twice after this, or you can sign this discounted deal to us and get paid a little bit extra right now and get paid your second contract in 2 years. I think they do hold a little bit of the cards with us on that one a little bit, but he's playing outstanding, Brendon. We've gotten a complete player here. In my video, I make the comparison of him being like Chris Clemens was. But at the end of the day, this guy's playing, you know, kind of on pace right now to even be kind of outpacing what Clemens was for the Hawks. And that's saying something. He was a good player for us. But Uchenna has just been all over the place, man. Just all over the place. And teams don't run at him because he's a great run defender. He can hunker down, set the edge. He's got no real weakness to his game outside of maybe he's not your typical 6'4", 6'5" guy out there. But outside linebackers don't have to be that in a 3-4 defense, do they?
Right. It's a little bit of a different animal. I don't know how to totally compare a guy like Chris Clemens to an Uchenna Nwosu, but if you're just talking about impact, like Nwosu feels like his impact might be bigger.
They've gotten a steal here. It's gotten a steal, Brendon. I don't know if we can say it's the best free agent signing yet, or one of the best. Certainly, Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett probably have that mark for Schneider, but it's one of the best ones we've seen throughout our time here with them. No doubt about it. Peter Ryabi, thank you for another donation of $5, Peter. He says, where's all the donos tonight? At least abuse the crap out of that like button. Well, thank you for the call to arms in that respect, Peter. I always appreciate whatever we get here as far as donations go. But I do also agree with him on that. If you do haven't hit that like button, do please smash that like button for me on this. As you guys are listening in, it does help the channel out. Let's get those likes up if we can, please. We got only 80 likes going with well over 300 people in here. So let's get a couple of those likes up if we can, please. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers here, and that'll help me get there a little bit quicker. But thank you, Peter. Appreciate you mentioning that. Barry Soy Toro with a $5 donation says, what's the pass rush ratio so far this season? As of last week, I'd ran the numbers on this actually, Barry. And I think this week it was fairly close to balance. So I don't think the numbers have changed much off this, but I believe we're at 55% pass, 45% run. It might be more.
This most recent game was 50-50.
So that would then, Barry, that would then remain. Geno's passed at a 55% clip versus running it at 45%.
And a big reason why the run percentage is so high is we've been playing from ahead a good amount recently, I think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been a big part of it too. Because early on in the year, you had games where you passed 70+% of the time, including that opening week against Denver. I mean, you were really hammering the pass in some of those games. So part of the reason too to be so impressed with Geno here, he's not dinking and dunking. He's not merely doing what he's doing on the back of having a great ground game, and every once in a while you ask him to make a throw. This isn't Ryan Tannehill here. This is the guy throwing it 55% of the time right now. He is being asked to shoulder the burden here and the load as evidenced by those 3 drives Brendon referenced at the end of the game. Yeah, you ran the ball pretty good and through those drives, but you also had to pass the ball, and you needed him to make some big-time throws on those drives to make that happen. Just impressive. But thank you, Barry. Appreciate you. R. Sanchez, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, Russ wasted Shoddy's prime.
I mean, Shoddy kind of got the best out of Wilson, didn't he? I don't know if that statement's true.
I think you can make that argument. That's really the interesting argument within it is, did Shoddy, within a situation that was probably tough to manage, did he find the best management of that said player to get the most out of him? And I think with Shoddy, you could. Certainly that. I think Russ put up his best stats statistically under Shoddy during his time. There were little parts of Russell's game that felt like they might came a little bit of like a hair forward, like running a little more up tempo under Shoddy. A tiny bit better control at the line of scrimmage, though it still left me wanting quite a bit.
I think that we were much better in the red zone under Shoddy.
There we go. That makes sense. That sounds right to me too. So there were some things that Shoddy definitely brought Sanchez, but I will say this with it, Shoddy's not gotten another job as an offensive coordinator since he was let go of here. I'm not sure that he's going to get another one, and not to say bad or good, but that's probably indicative of something. If you're not going to get another offensive coordinator job, if the NFL doesn't necessarily look at it like that. But thank you for this, Sanchez. Thank you for all the donos, man. I appreciate you. Daniel Bailey with a $5 donation says, it's hard to know Desai's impact. How much do you think this turnaround might be Desai in the background making suggestions or put Pete in check?
That we just can't know how the sausage is made, right? I believe he's helping with the game plans during the week, but we'll never know for sure.
I would probably guide you, Daniel, to an off-season mic'd up session at Clint Hurt on the field talking to Al Woods, and I think he's talking to Brian Monet at the same time, one of those two guys. It might have been like the first, they've got that new series they've done. It might have been like the first or the second one. It's the one concentrating on Hurt. But anyway, Daniel, on it, you see Hurt. It was a cool little moment. He's talking to Al Woods, explaining why Desai is coming in here, why this is occurring. And he's talking about how I know what my expertise is. I know what I'll be doing as a defensive coordinator, but part of what you do in this job is also knowing what you don't know. And that to me in that moment spoke very highly of the fact that Desai was going to have a say on what's happening, especially in that secondary, and that this is not merely a name signing you're bringing in. Let's also remember, Daniel, in the negotiation to bring him over here, as we were battling between Minnesota and us to bring him in to become this role here, you had to give him some control in 2 different areas. Player personnel, he was going to get some say in the draft and stuff like that, but then also in the game planning. So maybe I'm making a big guess and I'm out of pocket on this a little bit, but my feeling on this is that he has a substantial effect on this team, especially this secondary. I think you mentioned that we're running more of the cover, the man cover on the outside, cover 2 with the safeties is what you were saying, right?
Yeah, it was more cover 2 and more cover 6.
Okay. So because cover 2 can be run with the corners often in just a zone, or you can run that a little bit more man. I've seen them running a little more man principles at times like that. And they still are running the off stuff at a wide margin like they always kind of have with the corners off and then bail technique and all that. But there's been moments also where you've had him kind of one-on-one, it seems like. So I feel like he's had a pretty big impact. I think he's had a pretty big say. And he does got, I think, be given at least a little bit of the credit here, especially with how good the secondary has played.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I right now, there's nothing bad to say about any element of this defense. That's even why I know the defensive line gets smacked around a little bit, like Quentin Jefferson's PFF score is always at the bottom. But to me, it's like, how is this defense playing so good if the defensive line is bad? Because he's not alone. Like Puna, his PFF grades haven't been very good for the most part. I know it was good in this game, but overall he's been around 50 this year. The defensive line in general has not produced a lot of really sterling individual efforts, and yet we have these results. That kind of makes me wonder if a site like PFF is just missing the point, if they're just not seeing what these guys are doing well, like they do with Quandre Diggs.
I think it's also a little bit of the defensive adjustment they made, because it feels like they let their defensive linemen start to get up the field a little bit more too, and that those guys have started to attack over the last 4 weeks, as opposed to seeming like they're more in that 2-gapping, read and react kind of way that they had more been in the past, which was just getting them pushed off the ball. rather than letting him go and get in the backfield and kind of try to make a play and really try to do something with it. I do think PFF is going to struggle to grade a gap and a half system, because that's hard to make a measure even as a coach, I feel like, on whether or not I feel like my player could get back to that half gap, right? He shoots the gap like I've told him to do in the design of the play. The running back goes into the other gap, which is his half gap responsibility to get back to. And then making that determination where he really should have been able to clear back to that gap while still doing his first responsibility of shooting the gap. That to me seems incredibly hard to make that kind of grade for a PFF. There's certain, I think, defenses where it's a little easier to make those kind of assessments on the defensive line. This isn't one where I think it lends itself to making it very simple because of that. It's so much of a feel, right? With that gap and half stuff. It's really like, I feel like this is coming back to my gap. I got to get back there and I got to recognize it quick. And So I don't know. I'm just as, I think they're doing fine with it. I think they're learning their way with it too.
It's like the old quotes that like Earl Thomas had about the Legion of Boom, about how the defense was so simple. You didn't have to think about it. You just got to go out there and play.
Right.
And that made them play at such a high level.
Right. And for instance, to grade that defense, I've got lineman 2 gapping in that defense. Well, that's easy enough for me to figure out, right? Because he's not trying to penetrate. He's holding his block. And if the running back goes in this gap or goes in this gap, goes basically left shoulder, right shoulder, and that runs that spot, and he lets that through, fail, he stops it, graded good. And it makes it a little simpler versus when you're having the guy shoot the gap and then coming back to the half. There's more of a nuance to this scheme we've implemented here with our defensive line than there's been in the past. And it's going to be harder to grade. And the grade should probably be taken with a modicum of a little bit of salt with it. Though it is good, to your point on that Poona Ford got up there this week
right.
in his level of play. He was good all the way around in this last game, which was nice.
Yes, he was.
Thank you, though, Daniel. I do appreciate you, man. Joshua Schneider, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, if we get to 10-3 or 9-4 in the next 4 games, Bucks, Raiders, Rams, Panthers, any interest in OBJ as the third receiver for a playoff run?
He would never come here, I don't think, because we would not use him enough. We wouldn't throw him the ball enough because we use all these tight ends. So I don't think he would agree to that. He wants to go somewhere where he can put his skills on display.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. I think he's going to try to get into the back half of this season, have an impact somewhere to then get a contract this offseason. And if he doesn't get enough touches or targets, he's not going to want to do that. He also is kind of a bright lights glimmer guy to me, who's going to want to go somewhere that's a bigger market for him to show off. I've heard him connected back with Dallas. I've heard him connected back with Los Angeles. I think he's going to end up probably picking just a bigger market with where he goes. And I'd also be a little bit unsure on my interest. He's coming off now his second ACL surgery in the pros, and I don't know if I don't know if I want to bring him in with the dynamic we have rocking right now with this team.
Yeah, what I would say, I kind of expect him to sign with Buffalo, which is not a big market, but that's a team that would use him a lot. It would need him because they don't really have they've got Diggs and Gabe Davis, and then their kind of other outside receiver is, I think, Isaiah McKenzie or somebody like that. And that's a team that he could absolutely ring chase on, just like he did with the Rams. So kind of expecting it to be Buffalo personally.
I could too. The Josh Allen injury will certainly potentially impact that situation, because I'm hearing Tommy John injury. I'm also have heard that Tommy John's not the same for football quarterbacks as it is for baseball players who have to get the surgery if that's the case. But
yeah,
that could also be a part of this as well if he's out 6 to 8 weeks, for instance.
Yeah, I believe Jake Delhomme had the Tommy John.
Okay.
And it did take him out the whole year, but he did come back from it.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a better recovery process for quarterbacks to come back from it, but it's a scary injury nonetheless. And based on what you hear with that injury, the ulnar, whatever it is called, is when it gets triggered like it is, it does tend to be a Tommy John injury, no matter what. But I agree that Buffalo makes sense for the reasons you mentioned. Like, they don't have a running game. They throw the ball 50 times a game. So yeah, he's going to get his targets there too, along with that team. And I don't see how him coming here would be, where it would go. I just don't. Yeah. I think we're better off just running with Goodwin when he comes back healthy and hoping to God Eskridge can someday find himself somehow, some way.
And remember, Goodwin's done some nice things since he got here.
He has done some nice things, and he's still legitimately fast and a good cagey veteran receiver that you need on your roster, definitely at least provides that role. Taker 610 with a $2 donation says, are the Eagles benefiting from a soft strength of schedule?
I mean, they played the only other elite team in the NFC by record head to head and kind of blew them out. So, I mean, the NFC in general is weak. If you're an NFC team, your schedule's probably going to be a little bit soft because most of the teams you play are NFC teams, and most of the NFC is not great. So, I guess the answer to this question is yes, but I don't think it's that big of a. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the answer is yes, but that it is also along with this that they are the cream of the crop right now in the NFC, and they deserve to be so. I think what they're doing definitely benefits them, but they also have a very good team. I mean, you look across the board, and they don't have a lot of positions that are just huge holes. You got a lot of spots where you got guys that you recognize the name of, from the receivers on the outside with Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert's a good tight end. They've got the tackles on the outside, which are every bit, if not better than ours are. They've got the interior that's way better than ours is set up. Miles Sanders is a functional running back. Get to the defensive side of the ball. They got cover corners on the outside. They just went and got Quinn to add into their pass rush, along with the interior guys that they bring out there. I think that they're going to still be a strong team throughout this year. I do think that they're going to end up maybe peaking a little early. I think that's one thing you can maybe see. I don't think they're going to stay at the same rate throughout the whole course of the year, but they're the big dog on the block right now, as far as I'm concerned. Like Brendan said, they went up against the Vikings and they Hulk smashed them. So got to give them the nod, tip of the cap right now for doing that. Thank you, Taker, for the double dono though, man. I appreciate you. Mythical Pigeon with the $2 donation. Thank you, Mythical. Should we cut Diggs and draft a safety?
I don't think it's a realistic possibility right now monetarily. And Diggs is not playing bad. He's just playing like solid. He's not a star this year. He's just doing his job. Like that's another thing. I kind of said this about the defensive line, but same with Diggs. The defense is playing this well over the last month. I don't think Diggs can be that big of a problem for the defense to be playing this well. So I'm not that down on Diggs. He's obviously not as good as he was last year, and there are probably some verifiable reasons for that. But no, I'm not interested in cutting him.
There was another one of these mic'd up moments that give you a little insight into maybe where a player's head's at in regards to this question with Diggs. And it's Jordan Brooks was mic'd up, I think, a week ago, and Diggs is talking to him on a play where Jordan's talking to him about something happening. He's like, and Diggs was talking about, because Diggs had gone up and lit a guy up, and it was like he didn't have to hit him as hard or whatever. He says, these guys like, I got to get my moments because I'm still like trying to just trust my foot. And he's just telling Brooks, he's not telling this to a reporter or anybody, he's just telling this to Brooks in the moment. And you kind of had a moment for me when I went, oh yeah, let's remember here, the guy's foot was going sideways, 9 months ago. It was literally like this while his other foot was like this. And there's a lot of those injuries where you come back and you are 100% healthy theoretically to get on the field, but your mental aspect has got to kind of get your confidence back in that respect of things, especially a horrific injury like that one was. He's come along this year, which is just evidence to that you'll get more comfortable the longer you get from the injury. I don't know if he'll ever get back to the spot that he was at in prior years, but like Brendan said, you don't get to where this defense is at with having a guy who's one of that theoretically would be one of the huge liabilities out there at free safety in the entire sport. He's not been that. He's got some times and moments where the tackling is not always consistent, which is going to bother people. But I've always pushed back on this too, where it's like, look, Earl Thomas had a lot of moments where he whiffed on tackles too. He had a lot of big hits. There's a lot of times in the open field too, where the undersized free safety guys are not going to be able to bring down sometimes the real tackle breakers in this league. And here's the good news. You don't often need them to. They're the last line of the defense. They're not often usually the first line of defense. So I think he'll be fine. And it's $8 million, Mythical, to move off from him. I don't think the team's going to eat $8 million to create another hole in the team that they have to go draft when they have other holes that they probably want to use that draft capital for.
Yeah. He again, we're talking about a player who is right now playing okay. He's not playing bad. I think some people think he's playing bad because he gets shown up occasionally in very obvious ways, like the illegal contact penalty that took the Kobe pick off the board.
Yeah.
Or the missed tackles, but I don't think he's playing bad. His coverage numbers are actually stellar so far this year.
Yeah. And football does have that tendency to create those moments where you see a bad moment here, a bad moment there, and think that's the whole point of what that player has been throughout the whole course of that game. And there's a lot of plays in between that's one of the ways where PFF can be a good tool to lean back on to kind of, where's these plays in between? How's he doing with that? But I think he'll be fine. And much like I think about the rest of this defense, Mythical Pigeon, I think he's going to get better as the year goes on, and he feels more comfortable with that foot, moving forward. So it'll be okay. And we're not paying him. It's a pretty decent deal, right? Wasn't it when we looked at the numbers on this deal? It was
3 years, $40 million. It's cool.
Yeah. It's not going to be a crazy, hit, cap hit on that. Garth Knight with a $5 dono. Thank you, Garth. It says, I want to hear Jamal Adams say Diggs is underperforming. Jamal's being pretty quiet. I have a feeling right now. He's just rehabbing and being quiet and trying to get himself probably back to front on that one. So,
I mean, look, honestly, at the end of the day, the difference between Diggs playing elite and him playing okay is interceptions. It's, 5 to 6 plays over the course of a season. Yeah. So, what's he doing on the other 1,000+ plays? Is he still playing about the same level? Close.
Yeah, close, reasonably. And here's the thing he is doing, we've got to acknowledge with free safety in this defense has tended to in the past been the guy to make sure you don't get beat deep. Brendon, we're not getting beat. We're not giving up deep shots. Nobody's taking any chances deep against you. And that does tend to me, because we often can't see the center fielder on the game tape, that does reach back to me and saying, okay, you've got a guy back there that's taking those routes away and doing his job on that, which is, again, more just evidence to what you're talking about on that he is indeed doing some things that is helping in this defense and is to the benefit of this defense. Yeah, I'm guessing Jamal wouldn't say much in regards to that. Well, I think that was kind of what there was to kind of cover as far as defensive goes. Was there anything else to this game that stood out? I mean, I guess the one play we should probably give a little bit of love to is the Ryan Neal play. I talked about that in my post game a little bit in the respective. I felt like that was a play, Brendon, that really was emblematic of what this defense wants to do, which is it drives people crazy with the bend but don't break aspect of it. But it's also what you get from sometimes a defense built this way, which is the rally to the ball, don't give up, and good things can happen from not giving up, from being a player that will hustle and get to that ball.
Yeah, it's very similar to the play we had against Kyler the first time, right? It's the same kind of idea. And I don't know why a head coach can't get it through Kyler's head that he needs to hold the ball differently when he's running with it. It looks like he's juggling almost. He's trying to juggle the football on his way down the field.
He does.
But yeah, he's playing at a Pro Bowl level these last few weeks. He really is. Last year he played a lot of safety because Jamal got hurt. So I wasn't that impressed with him last year at safety. I thought he was way better at a dime corner. So he's come a long way, and I wasn't expecting it to be that quick.
No, I didn't think he had this performative level out of him. I thought he had a nose for the ball. I thought he could be a useful player, but it was one of those guys, you wanted him in a sample size spot. The more you got outside of that, he was going to get a little bit exposed with it. And he's being so much more than that this year in his development. He's played outstanding. The play was just one of those plays, Brendon, where it's just, that's heart hustle. That's giving up your body in that moment with not a high likelihood that you're going to get a lot from it. The chances of forcing a fumble there as you're coming around the other side of the guy's arm, leaping on a play where you have no real chance to tackle him because Kyler's just that fast. It again personifies to me a little bit of what you see from this defense right now in this turnaround, and everybody buying in, and this being a team effort you're seeing on that side of the ball. That's part of us giving the props to Diggs, is it's every guy getting better at their job and knowing their job and staying in line with it and trusting the guy to the other side of them a little bit. They supposedly had a team meeting that was addressing just this very point prior to this defensive turnaround. And I think that's the evidence of it you see on the field when the guy does something like that. We see it in other circumstances as well, but it was a kind of a watershed moment in that game for me, Brendon, when I went, oh man, this team's, they're flying around and they're in right now. Everybody is just absolutely in.
Right. I love it.
We got a $5 donation from Barry Soy Toro. Thank you for the double donation, Barry. I do appreciate it. He says, will 2023 finally be the year Pete Carroll and John Snyder finally address the biggest hole in the team? Punt. I was just going to bring this up. Punt and kick returner. Dallas stresses me out fielding punts.
I mean, they're basically trying to remove returning from the game anyway, right? Like, I think we have one return touchdown this whole season so far in the whole league.
Yeah.
So you just need somebody who can catch the ball, but apparently we can't do that. I understand we don't want to waste a roster spot on it necessarily because it's just somebody to catch, but it is getting a little ridiculous, isn't it?
It is. I don't know why it's hard to find a guy that can just field the punt, call a fair catch, and call it a day. The thing that drives me crazy with DJ Dallas, Brendan, is he'll get set too deep, and then the punters will hit the low line drivers that they'll roll, and he can't really, like, he's not comfortable coming up and fielding it short where he knows he has to back up and go get the punt deep, like if it gets kicked over his head. So he wants to always like stay back and then come in, which if it's low line drive, you can't do that. And then you're caught in this weird pickle where the ball ends up rolling another 20 yards and the guy gets a 50-yarder out of it. It's a problem right now, Brendan. It's cost us I think the Niners game, we had an issue with it. We've had a couple fumbles with it. Lockett was supposed to be the sure-handed guy back there. He hasn't been sure-handed necessarily in doing it up until this point. It stresses me out. I'm really worried it's going to cost us a game at some point this year in a big way. I don't know the answer, though, Brendan. I think the answer to me is I go to Bo Melton and I go to Derek Young this offseason. I say, hey, you guys. And they go, yeah. I go, you're fringe wide receivers on next year's roster. Oh, really? Yes. Do you want to find a way to cement yourself on the roster? Yeah. Go field 100 punts a day this offseason. Get a jugs machine to shoot that thing in the air and just sit back there and field punts. Get completely comfortable with you. Because like you said, it doesn't come down to mean the guy needs to return it and be good. It's being legislated out of the game. The punters are getting too good about kicking it deep and high, not giving those guys any room to be able to return it. So it's just about being sure-handed with it, being able to catch a ball with traffic going around you, being able to read the ball in the air, being able to run up on the ball and do that move they do, Brendan, where it's a short punt and the punt returner runs on up and then he comes and slides and makes the catch to keep it from bouncing, but he'll fair catch it as he runs up to do that. It's those skills of a punt returner you need now more than the return guy. I'm okay with Dallas as a kick returner. He's fine in that respect of things. He's done okay there, but punt returner, I'm with you, Barry. It freaks me out, man. It freaks me out watching him. I hate losing the field position game at times as we did in this game with that very kind of punt.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, and I hate to even say this right now, is the answer just telling Lockett to fair catch it every time?
Yes. That's what I want to see. That's exactly what I want to see. Just put Lockett out there. But again, Lockett has 2 fumbles this year in the punt return. One was the guy knocked into him, and the one was in the Lions game where I think he had it was just a straight drop. So I mean, maybe he's feeling left comfortable with that than ever before. And so there's probably not an answer there this year for it, Brendan. It's probably we're going to be, stuck with Dallas doing it going forward with a little bit of Lockett sprinkled in there. But it would be smart of them to try to find one of these young guys to get to do the job and get good at it, not just simply get back there. And he's learning. He's on the fly. He's figuring it out. How about we don't do it when the flames are fanning and all that. We actually in the offseason let him go through and try to figure it out. I don't know. Maybe it's just that hard. I feel like if you fielded 100 punts a day and you did it at various levels, that you could get pretty good at it over an offseason. But
you would think so, yeah.
Especially if it was like I said, Brent, if I'm a fringe wide receiver to get a guaranteed roster spot, I mean, that's something that could do that for you at that point. Special teams can get you on an NFL ball club. Many players have gotten there that way, but they haven't found an answer yet, Barry. So I don't know. I don't know. Thank you though for the $5 donation, man. We will continue to be stressed out along that path of it. So. One thing I want to mention too is that the special teams outside of the DJ Dallas returns was once again really good in this game, Brendan, and they've been great overall this year. I don't know, has Myers missed a kick yet, or is he? I think he's maybe
he had the bad snap.
The bad snap. So basically, the bad snap missed kick. But aside from that, he's been money. He's been money from 50 yards plus. Michael Dixon in this game dropped the ball down on the 1-yard line. Probably should have another couple in this year if some of his guys didn't have a brain fart at times and downing punts. Special teams unit has come back now, Brendan, to become a plus to this team, to become another benefit. And you talk about a team that has, this is going to carry this conversation kind of forward here for us on this, of where this team has for their upside, where they can go. And I feel like one of the greatest versions of this team you were going to get this year was a team that had a Geno who was playing even beyond what I thought he could play at, a running game that was solid and good, playmakers on the outside, an offense cooking with a modernized approach, and a defense that was likewise turning around the same sort of way. And then you throw in the special teams aspect of it. Brendan, does that raise this team to a true now state of when we have to look at and say, this is a contending team? This is not a team. We're beyond rebuild. We're beyond tank. None of us are even talking about those two things right now. But is this a team right now that we should not merely be looking at and saying, well, maybe they can sneak their way through to the division title and they'll get through a round and then kicked out, and they'll get exposed for what they are? Or is this a team maybe starting to show signs of being a team that can surprise this year, right now?
No, I think it absolutely is. I mean, this team has won 4 in a row. They've beaten some they've beaten some teams that are good. The Chargers are a good team. I know they have injuries right now, but they're still a good team. The Giants, I know they're not as good as their record, but they're a good team. So I don't see how you could reasonably come to any conclusion other than this team has a chance to hang with the better teams in this league. I don't know if they're going to win, but they belong in that conversation right now. And I don't think there's any other way to put it. So I'm bullish on where this season can go, especially when you look at the remaining teams we have to play.
So you wouldn't be a person saying this team is good as they can look right now. I still see them with a ceiling on this team. Instead, you're saying you see this as a team right now that has really no ceiling to it. You know, that doesn't mean you're saying that they're going to go there. Doesn't mean you're saying they're you're talking about lifting Lombardies here. Just means that you don't see a cap to how this team's put together as it's currently looking.
I mean, over the last 7 games, our offense is one of the 3 best in the league, I think, because those first 2 games were when the offense kind of struggled. Since then, it's been off to the races. And the defense over the last month has been top 5, at least, minimum. It might be top 3, top 1.
Right.
So I don't see how there could be a ceiling. That's a complete football team.
It is indeed. It's hard to pick it apart at that point if it's that good, and complete is the right word to use. You have a complete football team that can play with everybody at that point. They've got the whatever tool they need to deal with whatever particular team in the way they're going to try to win a football game. They've got the parts that can handle it. Are they going to get there? That's the question at that point, Brendon. That's the part that's going to be fun for us to watch and see how this develops going into the future of this year. We don't know on that, but where they're heading, the track record of Coach Carroll and his recent history of being so good on the back half of schedules and how he puts this stuff together, it does bode very well for this football club going into the future and what we're looking at for this season. So I'm not going to put a cap on it either, Brendon. I'm not going to say we're Super Bowl favorites or anything like that at this point. It's going to take a lot going right. The young guys are going to have to continue to develop. The defense is going to have to stay tight going up against legitimate offenses that, you know, maybe can challenge them in ways some of these offenses haven't recently. We have to acknowledge we've gotten some teams with some shortened staff, let's say. You know, Cardinals with the interior of their line, the Chargers with the receivers, they were down. No Rashawn Slater, Lindsley coming back from that the sniffles or whatever cold situation he had going on. So you've got some teams in the right direction of things on the other. There's going to be some stiffer tests to a degree, though, Brendon, because if the Rams completely are just going to fall in their face of things, and that last game of the season, Brendon, you could be looking at a season where the Rams are out of it at that point if they can't pull it together, and they may not be playing all their starters at that point in that final game of the year that we play them. And that game looks differently as well because of that. But we should feel great about this team and where they're going, Brendon, because there is no cap to it on a year where a lot of people were talking about tanking at the beginning of the year. And it's amazing that we arrive here and we're saying this about this team. And it's just so much fun, man. Are you having as much fun as I am with this team right now?
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun to not expect very much and then get pretty much everything you were hoping could have ever hoped for. It's very fun.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Well, we're going to be going forward here to Tampa Bay here on Thursday. So Brendon is going to be, I'm going to be on Brendon's channel. Am I going to your channel then on this?
No, remember.
Right, where I'm here. Yeah, that's right. So we'll be here on my side. We're going to do a little bit of a flip here with me and Brendon. Brendon's going to be back on the channel here this Thursday as we do the preview for Tampa Bay. And then I'll be going on his channel on double duty next week, Monday or Tuesday and Thursday, when we go into the week after this. So we will be previewing this Tampa Bay matchup here coming up on Thursday. It's going to be some fun stuff to get into on Brendon on this one. It's going to be very interesting. At a first blush, I'm glad that we've had a chance to play against some of these offenses recently that have want to dink and dunk as much as the Buccaneers are going to want to dink and dunk. Maybe that's given them a little bit of preparation for this kind of game. But it's going to be a fun matchup going into Germany. We're going to be up at the butt crack of dawn having to watch this thing. But, man, just another game to maybe take us along this path of who knows where we're going with this season, man. Certainly let's not put a ceiling on it, folks. Don't set your sights low. Let's not look forward to next season yet because we got this season right now. And guess what? We're in I think, aren't we in the top of the division right now, Brendon? I might have to check. Are we first? We first? Oh, that's right. We're first in NFC West.
It's not even close.
Not even close. We got some wiggle room. We got some space to breathe. Room for error, as they say. Well, folks, do me this favor if you could for me. Let's get we got a couple donations. Sorry, Brendon, real quick. Got one more at the bottom here, Daniel Bailey. Thank you, Daniel, for the $2 donation. Says Vegas says we're underdogs to Tampa Bay. Pundits agree. Well,
I think Vegas doesn't know how to quit Brady. That's all you can say about it. And maybe that's understandable.
Vegas also had us as underdogs to the Cardinals in both of the two matchups that we played them this year. Even after we gave them a little slap in that first matchup, that didn't seem to dissuade Vegas from believing that they should have been the overdogs in this last game. So Vegas usually does get it right, but Vegas often will have years where there's teams they just can't figure out. And certainly Seahawks are a team that a lot of people have had a hard time figuring out this year. So why not Vegas as well with them? The Tampa Bay match is going to be tough for us, Brendon. This is not going to be an easy go. I mean, you've got a Tampa Bay team that is weakened, but they ain't dead. They just beat the Rams. So they're still a team. And Tom Brady, as much as I give him a hard time at times for stuff and everything, he is still playing pretty good football this year without much of a running game and a lightened offensive line.
I mean, they got a good defense. Whatever you want to say about them, they do have a pretty good defense right now.
Yeah. So it's going to be a challenge, Daniel. This is as big a challenge as we've run into in probably the past. Is this the best team we played in 5-6 weeks, would you say?
I guess, yeah.
I mean, you probably have to say that.
Well, no. Are they better? They're not better than the Giants, are they? I know maybe we're a little more intimidated by some elements, but how can they be better than the Giants?
If they play the Giants 10 times, I think they beat the Giants 7 times.
All right. Maybe.
I think I do like the Giants how they're playing this year, but I think that Tampa Bay team would give it to them a little bit more on that. I think Giants are gonna come back to the mean. I think regression to the mean here this year on their record when it said they'll still be good this year. It'll be a step forward for Daboll and company there, but I think that they will kind of top out to where their talent level is when it's all kind of said and done.
Right.
So in other words, teams I think that were at their strongest early in the year that'll taper off as the year goes along. So thank you, though, Daniel, for the donation on it. So we will be back here in a couple of days, back on the channel here with Brendon to do a preview of the Tampa Bay matchup. Do me this favor, a couple little items if you could. First off, head on over there first off, hit the like button. Second off, if you're not subscribed, please get subscribed. We're trying to get to 10,000 here. I'm a couple hundred away. So please, if you can, help me get pushed up over that top. I'm kissing it. We're nuzzled right up against it. You can help us push over by subbing up to the channel today. And then after you sub up to the channel here, go over to Brendon's channel. Go over to Brendon's channel, Seahawks Brendon Nelson, and go ahead and subscribe over there as well. Sometimes does multiple vid uploads a day on his side of his channel. He's covering everything from end to end as far as Seahawks coverage goes. And we do 2 shows a week, of course. 2 shows. Usually it's one on either side of the fence, but we do continue to do that over on his end too. So you'll be able to catch us being able to do our shows when I'm on his channel. Other than that, appreciate all of you guys in the chat. Thank you as well for all the folks that hit the like button on there. You guys are awesome for doing so. And all of the donators, we had a lot of double donators and triple donators, even a few quad donators in the chat. So I appreciate all you guys for all your support to the channel on that. You guys are very kind for doing so. Brendon, I appreciate you for coming in as always and jumping on in here, man. You're awesome for doing the show.
Thanks for having me on
a weekly basis. We're going to be trying to program and put this win together for our Hawks this Thursday. So I want you putting your thinking cap on and exactly how we're going to devastate Tampa Tom and hopefully take advantage in the Deutschland, as Daddy Dennis says. I like Deutschland better than Germany. That's another way of saying it. So thank you, man. I appreciate you. You guys, I appreciate you guys as well. Thank you so much. We're going to be out the door for a couple of days, but that might give you some time to forget. I don't want any of you guys getting any forgetting here. I don't want any of you guys having some of these national pundits getting in your ear telling you about how we're not this good. We're a mirage. Oh, well, they're okay so far. No. Don't you let them talk you differently. We got Super Bowl aspirations, I tell you. Brennan's got them. I got them. And you're about to get infected with them too. So get it. Get hyped for this team. Get hyped for this future. And don't you forget over these next 2 days. Stay in that mode. Stay up there. Don't you ever forget. Ever forget, Brendon. Don't let them know. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.